Welcome everyone to this good early evening meeting of 2018, our first meeting of the year, and I want to just make sure that we're all being courteous tonight and turning off our cell phones, or at least putting them on silent. I'd like to call to order this group. It's my sincerest, distinct pleasure to call to order this joint meeting of the Healdsburg City Council and the Redevelopment Successor Agency. It is January 8th, 2018. And let the record reflect that all of the city council members are present this evening. Since our last meeting, December 18th last year, the city of Healdsburg has a new mayor and a new vice mayor voted upon by this council unanimously. I want to welcome my colleagues on council, our dedicated city staff, and our beloved townspeople and guests to our town hall, also called the City Council Chambers. Before we begin and pledge our allegiance to the flag, I would like to express some gratitude to our Mayor McCaffrey, who I know we could say former Mayor McCaffrey, but to my left, on your right, sits a man who served our city very well last year, and I'd like to take a few minutes, if we may, to just check in and admire the fact that we had such a great mayor. And instead of using the word great, I'm going to employ some other language choices that will pump up the diction for this dais and say that overall, I would say you represent to me a hardworking man that really walks your talk. And Mayor McCaffrey, as a council, we're all going to have a chance to say something. I hope that we employ really specific language choices. No pressure. I'm just showing up as the language arts person, trying to show off here a little bit. I don't know. But I want to say, first of all, that there was a poem I selected for you that I'm not going to read out loud, but it's in your card that I made for you, Mayor McCaffrey. And it also has the Healdsburg Bridge on it, and it has Sandy, the swan, which if you don't know the symbolism of that, you'll have to catch up with our folklore. But Sean McCaffrey, Mayor McCaffrey, has demonstrated a lot of commitment in tangible ways of showing up and creating ways for our community to gather and have fun, at the same time get useful products, and Sandy is one of them. But there are many more times where Sean McCaffrey could be counted on in a way that I don't think any mayor previous could say, in terms of showing up and being such a strong person. So anyway, there's a poem that I selected. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a Marge Piercy poem called To Be of Use. And the last lines of the poem suggest that everybody's looking for work that is real. And I think that Sean definitely demonstrates that on a daily basis, the work he does with his hands as an engineer, but also the work that he puts forth as a leader in our community, and certainly as a mayor twice. I've worked with him for 2 years on council as mayor, and I just feel really grateful for his work. So I want to start out by just telling you, here's your card, and you don't have to look at it now because there's a lot of language in it. And if I can be sneaky here, underneath the dais, we have a plaque, and I'm going to invite the other council members to say something too, but just tangibles matter. I mean, people say, oh, just say thanks and move on. But we all know when we retire, we decide to leave a business, or for that matter, a job as significant as being a public servant and being a mayor. It's nice to get the symbolic gavel. So this, thanks to our city clerk, is presented to you from all of us to just represent once again how much we appreciate your service to our city, and just make sure you understand, Sean, no matter what, we need you fully, and we're not letting go of your leadership at all as mayor, or whatever previous mayors are called in this town. I think it's always going to be mayor to me, and I really appreciate your love and support. When I was my first year, and I remember meeting with you, and you told me I could do it, and you kept assuring me, and here I am, Sean, believe it or not, tonight, my first night being mayor. So I just want to thank you so much, and I want to give you that as a tangible, and invite anybody on the dais to just remarks. I just want you to know the city of Sebastopol, their mayor spoke for almost 30 minutes about her reflections. I don't think we have that tradition in this city, so don't worry. But I'm just mentioning that other cities handle it differently when we change mayors, and I just want to make sure everyone gets a chance to say something. So anyone want to go first to say something to support this moment in time to recognize and show gratitude for our...
Well, my faith and my gratitude that Sean will not talk for 30 minutes. He's always been very concise and very straightforward, and has really helped us keep us on track and get stuff done. So thank you, Sean.
I'll be really brief. OMG, you are SOGR8! Exclamation, exclamation, exclamation. But no, in all seriousness, you were my first mayor, and my experience has been, first of all, I appreciate the get her done kind of attitude. That's Sean's probably most famous quote, "Get her done," you really were very measured and even, and allowed us to kind of be who we are and communicate our interests and our goals and really kind of get where we want to go. So thank you so much for your year of service.
Just real quick, I'd like to echo what the other council member was saying as well, and just say that, yeah, as a brand new council member, last year being the first year, it was great learning from you in terms of the various different topics that we had. We had some challenging topics last year on the agenda, and it was great to watch and learn how you navigated some of those to keep the order in the meeting and keep things moving forward. So I appreciated learning that from you. We'll forever have the disagreement about whether ketchup belongs on a hot dog. That's not going away. And then finally, I learned a lot from you. And then Mayor, I'm also looking forward to learning from you as we launch into your term as mayor, and I want to continue, what we've been doing the last year of, having a spirited discussion and remaining friends at the end of the day. And I appreciate everybody up here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Please.
Well, I want to thank everybody up here too. It was a great year, I thought. Very like Councilmember or Vice Mayor Higley said, there's some ups and downs and some interesting moments, but I think we all learn from each other and we work well together. And I look forward to Mayor Mansell, your year, and I think it's going to be a great one. And I think there's a lot of potential here in Healdsburg, and I think we're all going to get through it and get her done. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Gentlemen.
Yes.
You guys, you want to come down here?
Sure. Is it me though, or is it the whole group? Really? So that's important because that's like sets a tone right there. It's the way we are. Thank you, Ray, for taking that picture. So we now get to pledge our allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Would you please stand? Okay, so our next item is to approve our agenda this evening, and I'm going to invite a motion to approve tonight's agenda. Are there any additions or any requests for changes?
Yes, I'd like to have item C under the consent calendar be pulled for discussion.
Okay. Item C would be pulled.
With that change, I would move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Clearly passes. All right, we're moving on now to the approval of minutes. And I would, again, want to entertain a motion to approve 3 separate minutes. Our city clerk prepares these minutes. It's so important that we read them from 3 separate meetings held on November 20th, December 1st, and December 4th.
So moved.
Second.
All those approving those minutes?
Aye.
Okay, clearly passes. All right. Next item on the agenda is announcements and presentations. We have the Health Action Framework for Action here, and I'm hoping that they will come forward. Welcome. I'm so pleased you're here. One of the things I absolutely love about this group is this portrait. I remember hearing about this my first year of being on council, and it's really been a great guide. So I just want to welcome you for this evening's presentation. It's been long awaited, and just want to acknowledge who we are. So if you want to maybe introduce yourself and state your name and anything else you want to say as introductory. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. My name is Ariel Kelly, and I'm the board chair of Corazon Healdsburg. And Corazon is the health action chapter for our local jurisdiction. And I'm inviting Beth Dadko to present with us tonight. Beth works for Sonoma County and is the liaison to all of the chapters. So there's many Corazons all over Sonoma County, and Beth works with the health action group. And I'll turn it over to
Yes, and happy to be here tonight. And Lisa Wicki Schaffner was actually really planning to be here from the Health Action Steering Committee, and unfortunately her mother passed away, and so she sends her regrets that she can't be here tonight, but she was planning to be here from the Health Action Steering Committee.
So our goal for this evening is to bring everyone up to speed on the history of health action, where it started, where we are now, and then what's happening locally in Healdsburg, and some upcoming initiatives that we're seeking support on. So I know that you guys have been involved from at various stages, so I'll just kind of go briefly through the history. Health Action was launched in 2007 as a cross-sector partnership to address health in Sonoma County. And from 2009 to 2012, there was an action plan that was developed that created 10 initial goals and prioritized work on healthy eating, physical activity, and patient-centered primary care strategies. And then the subsequent strategic plan, or the action plan from 2013 to 2016, really focused on systems change and trying to get large health systems within our community to work together and to do more to prioritize some of this work. So in this time frame, the Health Action Group adopted health, education, and income, those three high-level priority areas, and established committees of cross-sector partners working in each area. And you may be familiar with the Portrait of Sonoma County. So the Portrait of Sonoma County was also developed by this group, which raised awareness about the health disparities in the county. And also in this time frame, the launch of the local health action chapters took place, of which Corazon is one. A couple successful initiatives that took place was the I Walk and I Grow campaigns to increase physical activity and increase access to healthy food. And also the READY initiative, which we're so happy is thriving in the Healdsburg area. So the READY initiative is a common kindergarten readiness assessment tool that's used across the county. And the Healdsburg Unified School District uses this as an intake survey, for lack of a better term, for kindergartners. And we were able to recently meet with both the West Side School District and Alexander Valley to invite them, and they've agreed to participate in the upcoming READY survey. So we'll be collecting data on baseline data for incoming kindergartners with all of those districts that then feed into Healdsburg Junior High and Healdsburg High School. And then also the Hearts of Sonoma initiative, which works to reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. You maybe have recently had your blood pressure taken, maybe as recently as 10 minutes ago, and we'll share more about what we're doing locally related to heart health. The Portrait of Sonoma County, which is a great tool, and you'll have a thumb drive of it passed out in your packets. There's some wonderful, very interesting data in there, and it's also a great book that Mayor Mansell is holding up. This portrait really examines the disparities in health, access to knowledge, and living standards for communities across the county. And those disparities are really at the root of what we're trying to solve with our health action chapters. And there's also a recent development of opioid prescribing guidelines with partners, and this is a great example of the collective impact model of bringing together all of these various organizations to solve major problems in the community. So here you see Health Action's current structure, and I apologize for flying through this presentation, but at the top there's a 47-member council which meets quarterly, and they adopt and steward community-wide health and well-being priorities. And members in this council include hospital executives, department heads, business and nonprofit leaders, city council representatives, including Councilmember Leah Gold from Healdsburg, faith-based and labor leaders, students, and residents. And then we also have multiple county-wide committees focused on health, education, and income. the Committee for Healthcare Improvement on the left side of the slide, Cradle to Career in the middle, and Accountable Communities for Health, which is, and the Economic Wellness Group. And so currently we have 8 local health action chapters. They are Southwest Santa Rosa, Windsor, the Russian River area, aka Rara, Greater Sebastopol area, Sonoma Valley, Petaluma, Roner Park, Cotati, and of course here in Healdsburg with Corazon.
And there's this next slide is a handout that you have in your packet. And if anybody in the public would like to see this, there's some handouts on the back table.
So this is the next action plan, the framework for action. And as you can tell, there is a lot on this framework, but it's really the roadmap for effectively taking collective action to support the community priorities and achieving the level of impact on community health and well-being that Health Action has always inspired to. And so you'll see that kind of underlying this and the foundation of it are the lenses of equity and community engagement.
I just want to point out, I think really Corazon Healdsburg embodies this community engagement value very well.
Thank you. So under the framework for action, kind of digging into some of those areas, they've really focused on 3 pillars, strategy, stewardship, and sustainability. And the strategy includes our priority areas, outcomes, and the activities we implement in support of them. And the priority areas are a long and healthy life, educational attainment, and a comfortable standard of living. And we recognize that Health Action's role in relation to any particular priority outcome is dynamic, and sometimes the Health Action value will be around supporting and aligning with existing efforts, informing the community, and working with upstream investments to develop full portfolios to advance an outcome.
No, I just wanted to go back really quick. And so there, under the strategy, there's 3 strategies under long and healthy life. So the first one is promoting high-value, well-coordinated, person-centered healthcare, and the Committee for Healthcare Improvement really holds this one. The second one is promoting healthy, safe communities and environments. That's very broad, but very important. The third is supporting behavioral health care as an essential component of overall well-being, including, it's supposed to say up there, upstream prevention. The second category under educational attainment, these 3 goals are all held by Cradle to Career, so kindergarten readiness, promoting the academic success of every child in and out of school, and supporting every young adult to prepare for and complete the highest level of post-secondary education or training to achieve their career goals. And I think what you'll see in just a moment as we go through what Corazon Healdsburg is doing, that there's a lot of work happening locally around all of these priority areas. Then the third, and I'm sorry, it's a little, I don't know what happened with the slide here, but it's a comfortable standard of living. Under there is promoting affordable, accessible, safe, and healthy housing for all, and promoting financial stability and independence. These are very big goals. And I think as you look here with the collective approach, we know Health Action is not going to solve every single problem for every single thing, but it will be taking a collective approach, figuring out which one of these things we want to do for each priority. So are we just monitoring some of these outcomes? Are we supporting and aligning with existing community efforts? Are we pulling people together to engage and convene? Are we educating the community around certain things? So we're taking this collective approach and applying that to each one of the priorities that are listed in the strategy section. So just to hope that makes sense. Kind of a lot of information.
And I think with the strategy areas, the 3 that Beth referenced, I think that what's not said but is underlying all of this is the amount of data, and I mean mountains of data that our county collects and researches and brings professionals with really incredible credentials to come and look at what is happening in our county, how it's similar to other places in California and how it's different, and then what strategies that we can put into motion, both at a county-wide, city-wide, and then resident-led engagement to really change some of those health outcomes. And so while kindergarten readiness is this just kind of one touch point, or knowing your blood pressure and being engaged in your own personal medical care, it's all of those pieces are really necessary ingredients to live a long, healthy life, and they all do fit into this overall picture that we call the social determinants of health, which is what we're doing locally. So you can go. It's okay. You can go a little bit more. I'm going to skip that one.
Okay. And just to mention that the next steps include on the framework developing work plans for each of these priority areas, and the chapters will be a key part in this development. And then Corazon and Healdsburg will be sharing a little bit about what they're already doing in alignment with the framework.
As I mentioned, Corazon is one of many chapters that is doing this work across the county. And what we do is we are really the feet on the street as part of this overall countywide initiative. So as we go out to the community and talk about some of these key initiatives, we're also bringing information back to the Health Action Steering Committee so that it can inform the countywide process. So it's really a full level of two-way communication. We also are able to have access to data that exists from the county health department or through the First Five Sonoma County or other partners in the Cradle to Career Initiative. So it's created a really great opportunity for us to have access to a lot of wonderful data and tools, including, which I'll invite Dr. Dave Anderson to come up and talk about the work that we're doing locally in partnership with the Committee for Healthcare Improvement, Hearts of Sonoma work. And so I'll turn it over to Dave.
Hi, Dave Anderson. I know you know me. Thank you for asking me to speak. We have formed a year or so ago something we call the Blood Pressure Squad. And they're it's part of Health Action, and it's made up of old retired nurses and doctors, including me. Ed Neal, Rich Mucci, Walt Mock, Doug Pyle, Jake Rutherford, who's back here, Barbara Shepard, Terry Leach, Leah Myers, Damien Marston, and Hallie Beecham. And we have increased the life expectancy of Healdsburg. I love saying that, and I have some data to show that. Heart disease is the biggest killer of Americans, and high blood pressure contributes to this and kills 1,100 people per day in the United States, high blood pressure. Smoking kills 1,400 people per day, but you've heard me say this. You know if you smoke, but you may not know that you have high blood pressure. And that is why high blood pressure is called a silent killer. So what we decided to do, this bunch of old folks, doctors and nurses, we decided to measure lots of blood pressures. And over the last year, we've gone to essentially all of the service clubs and did blood pressures. That is AUW, Kiwanis, Rotary, SURS, Garden Club, Senior Center, also Park Point, Healdsburg Chorus, St. Paul's Sunday Dinner, Healthcare Foundation, Healdsburg Chorus, St. John's Safety Committee, and the Farmers Market. We had 2 events canceled by the fire, and we also joined with Healdsburg Hospital on one of their business outreach programs. So, in 1 year, we did 424 blood pressures. 97% were high. That's 23%. It's kind of like what the NIH says, that 20% of people have 20% of people have high blood pressure and don't realize it. So we're pretty close to that. Actually, we've done 7 or 8 more here, and 3 of them were high, but I haven't put the data in here yet. But our initial, these old bunch of retired doctors and nurses, our initial goal was this: we knew that if we found one person who had high blood pressure, and he or she got treated, that we could save that person's life or prevent a stroke, heart disease, or kidney failure. So we didn't find one, we found 97. We're pretty proud of ourselves. They were encouraged to see their doctor and get their blood pressure evaluated and treated. I can explain more how we did it if you'd like, but that's what we did. It was a very worthwhile thing. But wait, there's more. With the support of the Healthcare Foundation, we had a permanent blood pressure monitor at Big John's. Many of you there have probably seen it. It also was at the library for about 2 months. It's hard to know how many people used it there, but it's in the range of 5 to 8 per day, we understand. So that's perhaps 2,500 people, and if we use the same 23%, that's 575 people have found high blood pressure by going in there and getting their blood pressure taken. They are encouraged, of course, to see their physicians or healthcare providers so that they can get it really evaluated. So we add 97 and 575, and we get 672 people who we have found with high blood pressures. So that is why I say we have raised the life expectancy of Healdsburg. High blood pressure is so easy to treat, and treatment can prevent strokes, heart attacks, kidney failure. Our little blood pressure squad has made a hell of a difference in Healdsburg, and I love saying that. We have raised the life expectancy of our little town. We are proud of what we have done, and we are so proud that we came up with our own bumper sticker. You may have seen this. Anyway, so thank you. If you have any questions? Any questions?
Any questions up here? I just think gratitude is the theme tonight. I just want to thank you so much for so many reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you can continue to get your blood pressure taken in the hallway throughout the meeting. So aligned with the Cradle to Careers early childhood education work, and I'd like to invite Jenny Levine-Smith up to talk about this work. We've worked with Alliance Medical Center locally and the Healdsburg Facebook Moms group to increase participation in Alliance's prenatal classes and build community. And the Moms group has collected donations of gifts to throw baby showers for 4 cohorts of moms that completed these prenatal classes. So we have about over 35 moms who have done those prenatal classes and had participated in the baby shower. And we've also worked with North Bay Children's Center to launch their new preschool program on August 21st at Fitch Mountain Elementary School, which has 30 students, and worked with the Healdsburg Education Foundation to allocate some of their funding towards sliding scale scholarships for families that don't qualify for the state-funded preschool. We've also planned a roundtable discussion for local preschool providers that Jenny Levine-Smith will tell you about.
Hi, I'm Mayor Mansell, Vice Mayor Hagley, council members. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Jenny Levine-Smith. I am convening the early childhood portion of the Cradle to Career segment of the Corazon and larger health action chapter and initiatives. And I think what we're working on really points to one of the things that Ariel highlighted a minute ago, which is sort of the ways in which all of these legs interconnect, the interconnectedness and the holistic way in which we're looking at health here. One of the things that we talk about when we talk about early childhood education is, are kids ready when they get to elementary school? Are they ready when they get to kindergarten? But if kids don't have access to early childhood education, that doesn't just impact their education. It also impacts their family's ability to make a living, right? To have financial stability if they can't afford childcare and they can't afford. And then it also, because it impacts that child's education, it impacts their ability in the long term to be able to make a living wage. And so there really is an interconnectedness, and I'm really excited to be working on addressing some of the issues that we have in Healdsburg. So one of the things that we have done, as Ariel pointed out, is that we have gotten all of the preschool and daycare providers together in one room to start talking about what we are currently providing for families in Healdsburg, what we're not, what the holes are, and what the sort of difficulties are in expanding our reach. How we as a group need more support, what those supports might look like in order for us to be able to do things like have a longer day at our preschool so that families with 2 parents who work full-time could actually send their kids to different programs. How programs can afford to run a quality program while admitting low-income families who might not be able to pay tuition. And so we've started that conversation, and we're already making some progress there. We are going to be holding 2 weeks from this past Saturday, a preschool fair at the community center. Thank you so much for the council support in giving us that space at the community center and also allowing us to have meetings there. We're really grateful for that. Just about all of the daycare and preschool providers in Healdsburg will be present. Every table is going to have Spanish and English representatives. We're going to have children's programming, a music piece and a storytelling piece so that families can concentrate on talking to preschool providers. We're also going to have a representative from Quality Counts and VIP program, which is a program that provides families with money to pay for tuition at preschools when they make too much to be able to qualify for fully subsidized preschool, but too little to be able to afford it. One of the things that we did when we convened providers is we brought a representative of that program to our meeting to talk with the preschool providers in town about signing up for that program, because there is a piece of it that has to do with getting evaluated, making sure that you are providing a quality education, getting the support that you need and financial assistance to do so. And I'm really excited to say that we have at least 2 programs who have decided to enter that program now. Currently, we only had the North Bay Children's Center, but Healdsburg Montessori and Live Oak are both getting in on it so that they can accept low-income families without taking the financial hit that would mean that they wouldn't be able to provide a quality education. So we're really, really thrilled about that. And they're going to be at the preschool fair so that they can tell families about how to apply for that money. It'll be on Saturday, January 20th from 9:30 to 11:30 at the community center. Spread the word. There's a Facebook event page. We have flyers in the Corazon office.
And on the back table.
And on the back table. And they're going to be all over town pretty soon. One of the things that we're also really excited about is using both our meeting with providers and getting families to come to the community center to gather more data about what families need, what are the barriers, right? We are doing some sort of inquiry around what the barriers are. We know what some of them are, but really hearing from families about what's getting in the way in between them and childcare, and data from providers about how many empty spots they have, what that looks like. And then really just addressing those gaps and continuing to do that. So thank you.
And I'd like to introduce Barbara Epstein, who is a member of the American Association of University Women and a representative who's been participating on the Early Childhood Education Committee of our Health Action chapter to talk about why AAUW wants to be involved with Health Action.
Thank you. More important, I want to tell you about how Health Action has made our program more effective. Healdsburg AAUW focuses on local education, basically in Healdsburg. And about 2 years ago, we thought we ought to start looking at preschool education and see what we can do, identify areas where we can help, either with financial support or with volunteers. We have a lot of hardworking people in AAUW. And I went around and talked to all of the providers and to some government agencies trying to collect information. And as I did this, I kept running into other people who were doing exactly the same thing. One of these was Health Action. And they took the initiative and formed a working group on preschool education, and we became part of that. And all of a sudden, instead of each of us duplicating our efforts, we had a cooperative effort, and we could share ideas and plans, resources, and really work together. And it's something that I haven't seen a lot of in Healdsburg. Even though we talk about it, we aren't able to do it. And this preschool fair that's coming up is really the first product of that cooperation. And I don't think that anyone else could have done it, any of the members could have done it on their own, at least not in this timely manner. So we thank them for bringing us together and giving us another cooperative effort in Healdsburg. It's good for the community.
Thank you. Thanks. So one other piece of the Cradle to Career initiative, so as we've been talking a lot about preschool and early childhood education, on the upward end of that spectrum is the first-gen college counseling program that launched this September. And we currently have 33 high school students who are at Healdsburg High. They are all first generation in their family to go to college and have identified their interest in attending a four-year university, have a high GPA, and are all taking college-level honors or AP classes. And so this program works with the individual students and their families to prepare them for the college application process, including SAT prep, AP exam prep, family support, summer programs, community service opportunities, and building their resume for success. And the other category that we talked about, the third column, is really around financial stability and working with families to help them have access to these countywide programs. So you'll see a post from our Facebook page up on this slide. And we are really looking at opportunities to bring existing resources from across the county to the northern part of Sonoma County. And two great opportunities presented themselves. One in the United Way's Earn It, Keep It, Save It program, which is a tax preparation site that will be launching on Wednesdays at the community center, where individuals can come in and have free tax preparation with translation. And the other is a grant that we received from the Healdsburg Forever Foundation with a partnership with Catholic Charities to provide financial literacy education programs so families can work on building savings, building their credit. And this is really focused around some of the financial documents that are needed in order to apply for housing. And so using these classes as an incentive for families to come in, we talked to them about building a savings plan to save for a deposit or save for education, and we match some of their savings. And we are also partnering with SRJC to bring additional ESL classes to Healdsburg. So we are going to be launching the week of January 17th, a daytime ESL class at the community center, which will be from 9 a.m. to noon, and we'll be offering free childcare. And those classes are in addition to the 2 evening classes that will continue to take place both at St. John's and Healdsburg High School. And then we'll be launching for the first time a Spanish language GED class for adults who are interested in getting their high school equivalency. And that class will be in Spanish and through the JC at Healdsburg High School. And then I'd like to invite up Leticia Romero, who I think is here but maybe in the hallway. Leticia, are you here? Okay, come on up. So I'd like to invite Leticia up to give an overview about the comité and the status of what has been happening most recently and what is on the docket for, say, tomorrow night with the comité, to give an example of what resident engagement looks like for our Health Action chapter.
Good evening. The comité is comprised of 22 residents from Healdsburg. They are representatives from low-income apartments, from churches, from school groups, the ELAC group at the school, a youth group as well. And what they do is they gather once a month. They take information to their respective areas, and then they bring back information as well. They have participated in a leadership development series recently. This coming Tuesday, tomorrow, and in the evening, Replay will give the second presentation to this group about the development over here at the Mill District. So giving their input, as to what is needed for the Latino community. They've also participated in organizing the planning for the Spanish livability session that is coming up also this week on Thursday at 6 p.m. at the Healdsburg Community Center. Let's see, apart from the getting involved, civically, they also do some cultural things and organize a posada, for example, in December. This Saturday also, they took part in organizing a demonstration on how to make tamales for the first time. It was a big success, and it looks like people are interested in continuing that class. So those are just a few of the things that the comité is taking part in. Thank you.
And it goes without saying, but their meetings take place monthly, and they're all in Spanish, which is, I think, a new development in Healdsburg, that there's community meetings being held regularly in Spanish at the community center.
Yes. Thank you.
And I know we are tight for time, so I will speed forward, but I know you're familiar with the free store that Corazon set up in response to the wildfires this past fall, and we are also going to be continuing on the free and reduced price Zumba and yoga classes at the community center. Previously, those classes were $10 on a drop-in basis, and if they're offered 3 nights a week, $30 a week for drop-in classes is too much for low-income residents, for any residents really, to pay for. And so with a grant from the Healthcare Foundation Northern Sonoma County and partnership with the Community Services Department, these Zumba and yoga classes on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday nights at the community center will be offered at a very, very reduced price. I believe it's going to be $3 a class based on that grant. And I know we've presented on this before, but in response to fears around immigration, that Corazon, while was not initially one of the priority areas for Health Action, after President Trump was elected last year, we started doing Know Your Rights presentations to the community to make sure that everyone was aware of what their constitutional rights were with regard to, asking for a warrant if someone's at your door, or what documents you should and shouldn't carry on you, and building plans for individual families. And because of that work, it's really hard to talk to someone about their high blood pressure if they're worried about fears around immigration. And so we communicated that to the Health Action Council at the county level and said, you really need to be doing more to communicate to the other chapters around what's happening in the Latino community right now. And so with that information, the Health Action Council was able to pivot and include, as part of their focus for last year, some additional information about Know Your Rights events happening across the county. And we were very lucky to be able to do those presentations in partnership with the Healdsburg Police Department, who has been an incredible partner in doing a lot of this outreach. So we're very thankful. And this upcoming week, we do, as Leticia mentioned, we have the Spanish language livability meeting that we, with the comité and the city manager, have worked to plan, and that will help the upcoming strategic planning process to give some information around quality of life issues impacting the Spanish-speaking population of Healdsburg. And as you all know, we did a lot of events together this summer, including Tuesday on the Plaza, the Art After Dark event, and Dia de los Muertos at the end of October. And we look forward to co-hosting more Latino and community building events with the city of Healdsburg going forward. So as we move towards opportunities for the future, one thing that, as you know, we were recognized as Nonprofit of the Year by Assemblymember Jim Wood on the floor of the State Assembly, your former colleague from this very dais, or at least the one that was here before the remodel. We are looking at updating Healdsburg smoke-free policies, and this really connects to our heart health work. And so right now, as we looked at what do our ordinances look like locally as compared with the rest of Sonoma County, we require only that 50% of hotel rooms be smoke-free, which is really out of sync with most of the ordinances in the county that require either 100% or 75% of hotel rooms to be smoke-free. So we see this as a great opportunity to require all hotels be 100% smoke-free for indoor air. And then for outdoor areas, there's also some great room for improvement there with our local ordinance. And so the outdoor service areas and sidewalks are especially important for kids, and Healdsburg doesn't currently have these protections in place. And I know that when we were communicating about this in December, it was actually right around the time of Santa at Costeau Bakery. And lo and behold, I was waiting in line with my kids at Costeau, couldn't get out of line because we were almost to the front. And there is a gentleman on the sidewalk smoking, and we can't move, and he doesn't have to put out his cigarette, but all these kids are standing there breathing in secondhand smoke because of the current protections or lack thereof that are in place. But one of the pieces that I think is most relevant to the work that we're doing locally and where we would love to partner with the city is the smoke-free multi-unit housing ordinance. It's virtually non-existent. So we really don't have a lot of protection for residents. And so a lot of other jurisdictions in Sonoma County have 100% smoke-free multi-unit housing. We see this as a huge gap in what we're allowing to happen for low-income residents and protections that should be in place to prevent second and third-hand smoke for those most at risk of negative health outcomes. And so we hope that we can continue the conversation with you all about those smoke-free ordinances and to see if there's some opportunities to advance some of that work that's happening across the county, but to put it in place locally. And with that,
thank you so much for all the collaboration that you've given to in support of Corazon Healdsburg over the past year. And I think it's just amazing to see from the outside perspective, for the countywide perspective. You really have something special here in Healdsburg. The way that all the different organizations are coming together to work collaboratively on these big issues, along with the community engagement from some of the populations that are facing the most disparities in the community, is really amazing. And just to have your support as well, it just is this amazing trifecta that I think I hope we can, replicate in other parts of the county. But you guys are sure are a model. So thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I mentioned we have 50 different organizations or representatives from 50 different organizations that participate in, that are local Healdsburg-based organizations that participate in our chapter initiative. So it's pretty exciting to have all of those folks taking the information back to their groups and then figuring out what additional collective impact potential there is. So thank you. Do you have any questions for us?
I just want to mention that this is a great way to start the new year. I mean, we always talk about New Year's resolutions or something around health issues, and I just really want to thank you all. And I think it's the people up here. I mean, I know that the structure is important and programs are important, and certainly aspirational documents, but I want to thank you so much for having such beautiful, strong people that are willing to take a stand and think about disparities in this community and certainly through the portrait. So I just want to say again how grateful I am for the human beings that are willing to invest time and energy and support people. And really, it's just a great health goal. And I love the idea of looking at smoke-free. And I definitely want to hear more. And I know it's been a lengthy presentation, but it's also been really engaging for me and very validating to hear your words and your different goals and just the different people that have been involved to guide this process. So I would invite anyone that wants to say anything. I don't know if any of my fellow council members would like to say something.
I'll just say that the topic of the smoke-free ordinances has been kind of percolated up here and there. I'm eager to entertain that at any point in the future if anybody would like to.
Is that something we should take up during goal setting? We'll be doing pretty soon.
That sounds fair to me.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to thank you all for your work on all these things. I think one thing that I noticed, Miss Levine Smith, with all the preschools and Miss Epstein, there's a preschool called the Co-op preschool here in town that's struggling and having some problems. I'm wondering if you've had the opportunity to work with them. I know that they're specifically looking for that help, and if you have, that's great. If you haven't, I encourage you to reach out to them. And thank you very much for your work.
Yes, they have been the Healdsburg Community Nursery School and the co-op has been participating in our sessions. And we also, they have raised some funds for scholarship participants. And so we're looking to find low-income families who don't qualify for the state subsidy that make just too much money, but not enough money to afford preschool, to be able to connect those families with that school. And they will be participating in the preschool fair coming up on the 20th. So we're excited to have them there.
Just real quick, I wanted to reiterate my the appreciation from everybody up here and what you're doing. And one of the places where I saw it loud and clear was the meeting that I think Councilmember Golden and I attended must have been last summer, where a group of people got together and it was related to this, where the focus was you had a comment about braiding the different funding opportunities, and it was really looking at from the city of Healdsburg standpoint and the county, and how if people need anything up here in Healdsburg, they actually have to fill out applications down in Santa Rosa, and there's no office for the North Bay area or the North County. And so looking at some of those opportunities to kind of streamline or tie together funding, and it was interesting in that room when we were sitting there were people that are essentially applying for the same types of funds that were maybe being applied slightly differently, but if they were looking for ways to collaborate to get the funds to say, all right, now this is perfect for what you're doing, and this over here is a little overlap, so we'll take on that. And so I just wanted to thank you for what you're doing here, and just kind of let everybody know that as somebody that's now on this side, it's very inspiring to see the behind-the-scenes work that's being done that maybe people aren't aware of in these multitudes of meetings that are going on week after week. So just thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you so much, Beth Dadko, just for all the support from the county level. And this is a lengthy presentation that was way overdue. And no, I really appreciated it. Every bit of it was engaging for me. So thank you so much. And we'll continue to talk and create goals. I know last year we had on our goals back in March is to establish a health goal that I know we talked about that. So let's do it. So thank you so much. And again, thanks everybody for coming tonight to support the presentation. So next is our pleasure to introduce a new employee, a director of public works and transportation. And I just want to allow our city manager to do that introduction. It's a good one.
Thank you, Mayor Mansell, council members. So I would like to introduce Larry Zimmer from the city of Petaluma, who the city of Healdsburg was able to squirrel away recently. But I also want to acknowledge Brent Salmi, who is still here. He's still active. He will still be here till the beginning of February. So we will definitely have words about Brent at a future council meeting. But at this point, I'd love for council to hear a little bit about Larry and his background and kind of go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. Let's start with just a brief background. As the city manager said, I've been with Petaluma for the last 11 years. Prior to that, I spent about 5 years in Santa Rosa and 10 years with Caltrans. I tend to stay in a job for quite a while. I expect that trend to continue here. I hope to be here for some time. My style at the podium is to be direct, honest, and concise. I'm hoping to develop a level of trust and respect from you all as I did with my prior council. My focus is on customer service. I feel strongly about responding to council and all stakeholders and all residents in a timely manner, giving complete answers. Always keeping in mind that I'm here to serve you and the residents of Healdsburg. Keeping on that theme of gratitude, I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you all.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you so much. And as I know City Manager already pointed out, our former director, he's still our director. It's this whole amorphousness of overlap here, but I just want to thank you so much. And we're not done talking about Director Salmi at all, but we're so happy we have that overlap so we can actually get some connection and all that wisdom and love and support and context. So thank you so much for joining the team of Healdsburg City and being the Director of Public Works and Transportation. And thank
Nobody
you.
appreciates the overlap more than I do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. We're now moving on to the third item on the agenda, which is council reports on matters of interest. And this is essentially to just share different experiences that we have in these last couple weeks on boards, as directors, representatives, and also anything that we want to succinctly share about our experiences in the last 2 weeks. So who would like to begin? Okay.
I'll jump in, Ms. Mayor. It was a holiday weeks, so not a whole lot. I met with Jessica Bangs, who will be bringing up a proposal about a bike pedicab to the council, so we talked about that. I also met with some of you for the committee appointments, Transportation Committee and Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. And then, of course, Saturday was the social, the Saturday social, the first of Saturday socials at the Senior Center, which was really fun. And my hats off to Anna and the public and the community services for a really great and low-key and fun event.
Councillor McCaffrey?
Yes, I just had a couple things. The Senior Citizen Advisory Commission interviews went really well. And then also on December 21st, I had a meeting with City Manager McKaylee, Mike Johnson from COTS, Colleen Householder, and Rick Caffaretta from Reach for Home. And we were just kind of checking in on how everything's going with our the homeless services that are taking place over at St. Paul's, and if there were anything more that the city could provide and do to help. And so we were able to make that connection. And then we also talked about things in the future and about improving the services, expanding the services. And that's something that we'll also probably be talking about at our goals session. So that was great.
Yeah, I wanted to mention a couple of meetings I attended with the Business Advisory Group. These are the merchants who are most affected by construction at the Roundabout project. And we met before Christmas. They were particularly anxious that their Christmas season not be overly impacted. So we talked about ways that we could address that with stopping work on Healdsburg Avenue at noon, various efforts to keep the area cleaner, and holiday decorations, signage, just various things we could do. And they got, I think they felt very listened to. the city manager was present, other city staff were present. Jim Winters from GHD, the engineering firm on the project, was very active in representing their interests. And at the second meeting, I think they expressed that they felt that they'd been heard and that their needs had been addressed. And although they still weren't thrilled with their situation, that they felt happier about it than they had been previously. So I think these meetings are helpful. The other thing I want to mention is the HTID, Healdsburg Tourist Improvement District. I'm now the representative from the council, and I attended one of their meetings, and there was discussion about how they would allocate the district development funds. They made a decision right away to allocate some funds to Healdsburg Jazz and Art After Dark because they felt like they needed to know that they had that money as soon as possible. But the rest is still to be determined, and we are looking for a public member, somebody from the public to round out our little subcommittee. It's going to be Cersei Scher from the lodging industry, myself from the council, and we need someone who's basically just an interested citizen who doesn't particularly have a dog in the race, who wants to contribute their perspective on how those funds might be best spent. So I think the application period is until February 1, if I understand correctly, and more information can be found on the Chamber of Commerce website.
Vice Mayor Higley.
Just a couple of things. The mayor and I, we interviewed quite a few interested candidates for the openings on the Parks and Rec, and it's always a fun time when you're interviewing citizens. And from the stories that I've heard in the past, where sometimes you couldn't get any applicants, and now we have an abundance. And I think the public participation is always a great thing. And then, other than that, things are really going to pick up with NCRA, the North Coast Railroad Authority. I'm headed up to Eureka on Wednesday for that, and so I'll have more to report at the next council meeting on what's going on there, because there's some excitement going on there. And then the last thing is just, we did have kind of a break, so I did a lot of just reflecting on the last year, and as I mentioned before, I think the key word for this year is connectivity. As I look into 2018, I look forward to working with fellow council members on doing more. Our town is 4.5 square miles, and you seem to get this neighborhood, that neighborhood, downtown, outskirts, and I'm looking forward to doing more with community conversations that we talked about and different outreach to do what we can to bring our, we're one Healdsburg, and so that's kind of the overlying theme as I look toward 2018, and so that's my report. Thank you.
And yeah, so the last couple of weeks certainly been full with lots of activities, but one thing I wanted to mention was an improvisational activity, at least it was for me, to go to our plaza and stand in the gazebo and sing. Chris Herod started that up on a Facebook invite, and it was really great for me. Just, I don't know, there's something about in that plaza and being in that gazebo and singing with everybody and feeling a connection through voice in that way, and I just really enjoyed that experience. And I don't know how many of you were there, but I was there, and it was wonderful. And that was a wonderful thing. Our Parks and Recreation Commission chair, I did go through the interviews. I just want to echo your comments and also extend and say that we have some really wonderful people in our community that want to serve. And I think it's remarkable just how many people see a moment in time right now, 2018, to be a time in their lives where they want to engage more. I don't know exactly what the emotional landscape is on that, but people really do want to get involved. And so I want to honor that and make sure that we really support new faces, new people, new ideas, but certainly support the past as well. But I think that it's a time in our history to really embrace the new energy and the young energy. I also wanted to say that I've been reading the AIA, the SDAT proposal, and I know there's more to talk about on this one, but it's just a really amazing document, and if you don't know all those acronyms, you soon will. But I just want to thank the community stakeholders that put this together to make an opportunity for our city to be more reflective. And as we know, with the RUDAT back when, and now we're going to be looking at another way to look at our city and to get some support from an outside lens, if you will. And I think anytime your thinking is pushed right now, especially with all the challenges we have with health and housing and certainly inequities that we see not only in income but also in lifestyles and how people are living and you know, housing is just every day. I just think back on October and how blessed this city is, but how our neighbors to the south are just suffering. And I just want to make sure that we're all really open to looking at what we're doing, and we can do better. And I know we can do better. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share. It was a great holiday, and I really look forward to this year. And I thank the staff of the city of Healdsburg. I wish we could give big bonuses to public servants because really there's some amazing work being done in our city. I did also want to comment on the business advisory group that Councilor Gold referred to. Our communications director, I just want to commend you so much for the work you're doing. You have a style that when I see your work, I know you come from some amazing background, and I think we're really blessed with your service right now. I think that we have a lot of work to do with community engagement, but absolutely supportive and definitely grateful for your service in helping with the roundabout communication, and our engineers and everybody that's working so hard to get everything so that we continue to have, as former Mayor McCaffrey said in a quote, the water works literally when we turn on the faucet, and the electricity, all the different components of this autonomous city. I'm really proud. So with that in mind, I'll move on to City Manager. Do you have a report?
Nothing to report.
Okay, so we move on to number 5, which is public comments on non-agenda items. So I want to just mention that at this time we welcome you to come to the podium, and any item that's not appearing on tonight's agenda may be brought up. I would like to ask, as your new mayor, to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. And I would also like to make sure that when you step up to the podium, you do speak into the microphone, and I will be making symbols like, you need to be audible. And I would like you to begin by stating your name and clearly state your name and your address so our records may accurately identify your presence. I also would like to try something new and ask how many people plan to speak, just to get an idea of what the numbers are. And again, you can change your mind, but it's fun to just kind of know how many people are speaking on non-agenda items. So if you could just raise your hand, I'd appreciate that. Okay, and again, if you change your mind, it's okay. I just wanted to get a feeling, a little like dipstick on like what the level of depth we're going here. So it sounds great. So if you would, please, I'd like you to feel free to come to the podium and again, speak into the mic, state your name and address, and I welcome you to come up. So thank you. Tony.
Good evening. Tony Giraldi. I live in Santa Rosa. Mayor Mansell, Vice Mayor Haley, members of the City Council. It's a pleasure speaking in front of you this evening. My name is Tony Giraldi. I'm the General Operations Manager for Sonoma County Airport Express. Sonoma County Airport Express is the primary sponsor of the Miss Sonoma County Scholarship Program, which I also serve as Secretary, Treasurer, Appearance Coordinator. I would personally like to invite our elected officials here in Healdsburg to our 72nd annual Miss Sonoma County competition. Scholarship competition taking place on Saturday, March 3rd at the Spreckles Performing Arts Center in Mirror Park. We have some tremendous young ladies that will be competing for scholarships. Every contestant will be receiving some level of scholarship to help them with their future education. This is a program that's been in existence for 72 years, longest consistent running program under the Miss California organization. Our program is recognized under the Miss California organization, Miss America program, for having our title holders so involved in the community. They make hundreds of appearances throughout the year. And we will be selecting our 72nd Miss Sonoma County and our 8th Miss Sonoma County's Outstanding Teen. Those title holders go on to compete for Miss California, as well as Miss California's Outstanding Teen in June in Fresno, and possibly continuing on to Miss America or Miss America's Outstanding Teen. So it's pretty exciting. It's a great program. Young ladies here in Sonoma County are so fortunate to have the program available to them. Last year we had 38 elected officials in the audience. Unfortunately, we didn't have any from Healdsburg. So we would certainly like to have some presence from Healdsburg, especially this year very excited to announce that two of our contestants are incredible young ladies from Healdsburg. So we're excited. We've got a great group of ladies throughout Sonoma County. So again, looking forward to possibly having you there on March 3rd, 7 p.m. at the Spreckles Performing Arts Center. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Welcome.
Hi, my name is Emily Wong. I'm Miss Sonoma County's Outstanding Teen 2017, and I would like to congratulate Miss Mansell, Mayor Mansell, on her position on her first night as mayor and her first city council meeting. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm so glad I can be a part of this milestone. A little bit about myself. I go to Santa Rosa High School. I'm a junior at Santa Rosa High School. I live in Santa Rosa, and speaking of health action, I'm a part of the Youth Health Action with the Prevention Partnership of Sonoma County. So a little bit about my position and about the appearances I've made. One of my favorite appearances was the appearance in Healdsburg, where I kind of contributed to the Sonoma County Fair, the traveling fair. I went to a little gathering at the Memorial Beach where I met former Mayor McCaffrey there, and I also rode Sandy the Swan, so I know a little bit about her. Thank you. It was also a very fun experience. I got to mix and mingle with the Healdsburg residents. I got to play with little kids and have a very great time. I love Healdsburg. I love Healdsburg. I love the Wicked Slush. A lot of my friends love Wicked Slush, and I love Wicked Slush as well. And I love the downtown, and Healdsburg is one of the cities that I would love to come visit more often. Sonoma County, I've realized I love Sonoma County due to the past couple months. I've realized my position and the position I needed to take throughout these last couple months. I've made a couple appearances because of the natural disasters that have occurred, and I am just so proud and to be a resident and to come from a county that's so supportive and so beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations too.
Thank you so much. Congrats to you. It's so amazing to see a teacher be a mayor, and a couple of my friends have you as a teacher, so that's also really, really cool.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here tonight. It's okay if you want to add one more thing. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Denise. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, council members, city staff, Denise Hunt, College Street, Healdsburg. And tonight I'm presenting as the chair of the SDAT committee, and Mayor Mansell, you held up the application, but I suspect that most of the public in the room tonight and most of the public streaming, hopefully there's lots of those, don't know about this, and so we wanted to talk about it tonight. And alongside me is the co-chair of the SDAT committee, who will speak in a moment. So there's so many positive things going on in this community, and this is what we hope is going to be a very, very, also very positive process for the whole community. What the mayor didn't mention, but I want to put a finer point on it, we have actually been awarded the AIA 2018 Grant for Technical Assistance. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read my notes. So we're very excited to have the opportunity to work with the team of experts from the American Institute of Architects, known as the AIA, as an awardee of the 2018 Design Assessment Program. It'd help if I put my glasses on, which now is focused on sustainability. The AIA program is called the Sustainable Design Assessment Team, or also known as SDAT. We will try not to throw these terms around, but want everybody to know what that is. They have about 40 years of AIA programming experience behind them, and they've built their assessment process around broad public participation, which they consider foundational to any successful community design and visioning process. The SDAT process weaves together design assistance, technical expertise, public participation, and input from all local stakeholders as their formula for moving the community toward desired changes. In 1982, 36 years ago, but who's counting, the AIA team was here in the community, known as RUDAT, and there was an article recently in the Healdsburg Tribune about what the RUDAT is. A lot of people have heard about it, but that's what it was. And so they came to Healdsburg in 1982 to help the community vision and plan its way forward to becoming a successful, wine, food, and lifestyle destination. Now, Healdsburg once again has the opportunity to come together as a community to vision and plan our way forward to ensure that we can sustain our assets and our blessings for a generation into the future. And that's really what we're hoping for here. The SDAT assessment and recommendations will only be the beginning of the community development process. It sort of kicks off the process. The steering committee, the group of us, we are just forming. We're just getting our work started. There's about 20, 25 of us. If it's an open group, we want the steering committee to represent all parts of our community and all voices. We're going to ensure that all voices are heard in the SDAT assessment, so the results are representative, and equal. So I would say just stay tuned for more information on how to participate and engage in the process, which is open and available to everyone. And I heard all of you just mention in your reports, connectivity, we are one in Healdsburg, people want to engage and be involved, and community engagement. So we're hoping that this process will give us that.
Congratulations. Thank you.
Good evening. As the co-chair of the SDAT Steering Committee, I just want to reiterate and kind of outline what that means in terms of process. Sometime in February, we expect a couple of people to come from the AIA, one of whom will be the team leader, who will in fact conduct the assessment and provide support. So the steering committee will meet with that person, will refine what it means to work with them, and then a team of 3 or 4, maybe 5 people will come in May or June and spend 3 days here, and they will make an effort with assistance from our steering committee to connect with all the sectors of the community. So between the visit in February and the visit in May and June, as a community, we have a lot of work to do to come together and know how to interact with this design assessment team that will be here in late spring, early summer. In that process, I want to reiterate for everyone that we want our process to be as open as possible. We're hoping to meet regularly at the community center, and those meetings would be open for people to come and see us work and contribute and listen to how we're moving forward. So the pace of this will pick up pretty aggressively a little bit now until we have the first visit with the AIA, which will kind of provide a chart for us to follow, getting to their bigger visit in late spring, where they'll want to visit the town in all the ways that one can do that, visit the neighborhoods, see the events, meet the city council and city staff, as well as all the other stakeholder groups that have a view and a vision of what we might do with Healdsburg to sustain both the beauty and the success that we've felt since the RUDAT was done in 1982. And we're open to anyone who's interested, and we'll make clear how to connect with the steering committee through media and some posting a website and a phone number. So thank you very much for your assistance, and it should be known that the City Council approved a $5,000 contribution to this process. The AIA puts in $15,000, and we'll probably have to raise some money for incidentals, materials, printing, space, food, when those people come and visit from the AIA. Their portion of the grant essentially pays for transportation. These will be architects, urban planners, economists that they select after the February meeting where we define what we're going to do in late spring. So thank you very much. It's pretty exciting. I hope you all jump in. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Anyone? Welcome.
Hi, Council. Welcome, Mayor. Thank you, former Mayor Sean. I'm Russ Messing. I have a poem. It's called You Choose. While you are sleeping, the world creeps in and change rumbles. You wake up to new, to a tell-all book, to Me Too, to a familiar tweet, or the latest whatever. You yawn and stretch, do your same old, coffee, commute, cell phone check, the news, or jolt awake to catastrophe, fires, hurricane, saber rattlers, your best friend's death, or most likely life slips by, predictably, manageably, a dawn, a hug, the news, things the same and reshaping. So welcome to these do-re-mis. Welcome shift and different. Move on. Hello the unexpected. You keep on moving. Or maybe not. You get to choose. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anybody else going to speak to non-agenda items? Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Mansell and Council. I'm Marilyn Joyce, and I live in Healdsburg. So with the acceptance by the American Institute of Architects to come to Healdsburg, and also listening to Corazon and what the expansive program that they are undertaking, I feel really hopeful this year. I feel like this adventure that we are embarking on with the architect team is an opportunity to shift our way of thinking about community. When I think of sustainability, I don't think of just the environment and our systems, but what is going to sustain us is how we shift, how we look at what it means to be a citizen. Been looking at this book. It's by Peter Block, Community, the Structure of Belonging, and he talks about what it means to be authentically engaged in community. And one of the things has to do with discovering what it means to be a citizen. And I don't mean a citizen with papers necessarily, but in the Greek sense. As a person who is accountable for and committed to the well-being of the whole. And that, to me, is the promise of this new process. Not so much learning what systems will make us sustainable as how we are together as community sustainably. Thanks.
Thank you, Marilyn. Is there anyone else? Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make any comments? All right. Okay, we'll close public comment. And we are moving on to the consent agenda, or actually consent calendar, and I believe we are going to pull off item C. So is there a motion to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item C?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Roll call. We have to do a roll call. Thank you.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember McCaffrey? Yes. Councilmember Naokis?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Hagley?
Yes.
Mayor Mansell?
Yes. All right. There are no, okay, so I just need some help.
Sure, I can go
Item
ahead
C,
and...
item C immediately goes. Okay, thank you. So we are now open to discuss and address item C.
So item C is resolution to support SB 705. It's a statewide legislation to phase out the use of polystyrene foam takeout containers. Thank you. Styrofoam, thank you. And this is a letter of support and for SB 705, I believe Councilmember Gold asked for this item to be pulled.
Yes, so I'm really appreciative that the council wants to support this measure. I think it's a good one. But I just wanted to discuss another part of the request that was made by Senator Allen, who's sponsoring the measure. So he has included in his letter a interest form, and he really wants to know also about how interested we are in doing any local actions on this issue. So the options are we interested in phasing out the use of polystyrene foam in food takeout containers in our community? Are we interested in moving towards exclusive use of sustainable food packaging in our community? Or are we only interested in phasing out polystyrene containers in the community if the statewide bill, SB 705, fails to become law in 2018? Then they also asked to name a city representative who would be the communications point person on this issue. So that's what I wanted to ask you all about, is to kind of ask you how you think we should respond to this. I think if we indicate interest, it's not committing us to any action. It's merely inviting them to communicate with us about stuff that we might do, and then that would sort of keep that dialogue going. So I would be in favor of doing that, and I would be willing to be the point person to receive or disseminate anything that we're doing on this topic. And I wonder how the rest of you feel.
Councilor Nyokas.
Sure. Well, thank you for bringing this. I think it's great. It's a very positive movement. I think, first of all, from the aspect of polystyrene and plastics in general and waste in general, as a longtime river cleanup person, I can attest to the horrible trash that ends up in our waterways and in the ocean. So I'm in strong favor of doing what we can to prevent that upstream, limit that waste from the upstream. I will say that I think that given the new waste provider, Recology, I know they're really strong on that. I wonder if it might be more effective if we maybe focus, as they kind of come online, work with them to establish not just a polystyrene strategy, but an overall strategy on how to reduce all kinds of different waste.
I think the issue is that styrofoam is just not recyclable anyway. It's just there's no one's figured any way to reuse it. Yeah. And one thing I'm not uncertain of is how much is actually being generated in Healdsburg. I really have no idea how many businesses are currently using those containers. So that would certainly be something to find out before we invest significant energy into dealing with it on a local level.
Does anyone have anything else to add?
I'm certainly interested in pursuing it. I think that's a good thing. I just have to say, though, that if we're keeping with the theme of Sandy the Swan is made out of recycled polystyrene wine tank insulation foam. So yes, it's possible to recycle it, but I don't think you could do that with a hamburger container or something.
Good connection, Counselor. I have no problem with getting beyond an aspirational level. I think it's really healthy for all of us to realize that if we're going to get anything done, we have to get some action-oriented aspects to our goals. So I would hope that we would be open to having a point person. And when I received that letter from that state senator, I really wanted to do something because I've been approached by different people in town, especially on the plaza. There's people in this audience I know that we could talk to that know a lot about what happens in our garbage in just downtown. And I don't want to start pointing fingers at any business, but there are businesses in our town that have really taken on the compostable and really tried to eliminate bad packaging and things that aren't supported. But so I have no problem supporting a point person and moving forward with the addendum to the aspirational aspect of just saying, yeah, we support it, move on with the Senate bill, but to actually explore it in that tone of an exploration, which would move to perhaps a local level adjustment or possibly even creating our own way to look at things in our city of Healdsburg. But and Recology, of course, paying attention to our new provider of waste management. But I just want to do something more than just say, yeah, okay, consent agenda or consent calendar, yeah. So I'm happy that you're willing to do it, and I could support that. So I would support you moving forward and filling that out, and it doesn't make any major changes yet. We're just in a mode of learning and understanding. So I could support that.
Yeah, I echo the comments, I like the approach of kind of not just diving headfirst into, okay, let's do our own, ordinance or whatever, to really see what the impact is. Because since this came out, when we got the letter last year, I started looking, as we go out, and I mean, Healdsburg is pretty progressive when it comes to this stuff. So there is working with Recology when they take over, and just really see what the level of waste really is, and if there's a need beyond this. But I'm supportive of everything that's been said here today.
So I'd like to move that we accept this resolution supporting the letter, and then also include Councilmember Gold as a liaison, and check the boxes on that were included in the letter from the state senator about Healdsburg being interested in future exploration of this in more depth, and if necessary, include this on the next consent calendar, since it wasn't maybe specifically listed in
So just so we're clear, I think it's fine to do exactly what we're doing. I mean, what you're asking Councilmember Gold to do is basically get some additional information, which will later be used if the council is interested in doing an outright ban or whatever measures you want to do. I believe you can still do that with the direction you're giving to tonight without having to re-agendize at this point. So all we're doing is we're adopting this item, and there's no formal direction given to staff other than Ms. Gold, Councilmember Gold, is going to receive some additional information that may or may not allow the city to move forward with something at a later date.
Yeah, so that's basically my motion.
So the motion would be exactly what's on the agenda.
Right.
I'll second that.
Can you say the motion as it's on the agenda, because it's a little different than what you, thank you.
I move that we accept a resolution of the City Council of the City of Healdsburg supporting the enactment of SB 705, statewide legislation that phases out the use of polystyrene foam takeout containers statewide.
Second.
All those in favor? We will now take a roll call vote.
Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember McCaffrey?
Yes.
Councilmember Naokis?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Higley?
Yes.
Mayor Mansell?
Thank you. Sounds good. All right. There are no public hearings, so we're going to be moving on to an old business item, and it's a reconsideration of professional services and agreement with MIG for the Healdsburg Avenue Improvement Study. So joining us is Director of Public Works, Brent Salmi, and Engineer Mario. I don't know how to say your last name, Mario. Can you say it for me once?
Landeros.
Landeros. Thank you, Mario Landeros.
Principal Engineer Landeros will provide the presentation.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Very well. Good evening. Congratulations, Mayor Mansell, Vice Mayor Haley. Good evening, council members. This next item before you is for reconsideration of the professional service agreement with MIG Inc. for the Healdsburg Avenue Improvement Study. First, I'd like to just go through a little background here, if I may. Figure this out. A little background. Yeah, in October last year, the council adopted its resolution to approve a professional service agreement with MIG Inc. for a not to exceed amount of $437,000 for the Healdsburg Avenue Improvement Study. At that time, the staff reported that MIG was one of 3 firms to submit a proposal in response to the request for proposal issued by the city. The other 2 firms that submitted were WRT. They had a proposed fee estimate of $420,456, and Kimley Horn and Associates, who proposed a cost of $490,850. Subsequent to that award, in November last year, the council, as part of its letter of support to the community group applying for the AIA STAT Team 2018 program item. The council, by motion, voted to bring back an item for reconsideration of the agreement with MIG. This time, I'd like for you to know that tonight with us in the audience are principals from MIG. They're behind me. We have Principal Tom von Schroeder and project manager Mukul Malhotra and Caroline Verheyen, who will be handling the public engagement. At the conclusion of this reporting, MIG would also like to make a short presentation and be available for questions and answers. So in considering the previously awarded contract and after discussions and questions and answers, the council could make there are options on how to go forward with this, and the council could choose to, in fact, take no action on this item tonight, and in such case, we would continue with formalizing and executing the contract with MIG. Alternatively, by motion, the council could recommend a reconsideration of the agreement with MIG and have staff prepare a resolution rescinding that prior approval that would be brought forth for future consent calendar. But in rescinding this agreement, and for your consideration, present to you some of the fiscal impacts involved with this. First and foremost, rescinding the contract with MIG would make available $437,010 for alternative uses. There is, however, one issue, and I just want to clarify that. This contract for services by MIG is a precursor to a future construction project that would be in part funded by a federal program, One Bay Area Grant Funds, in the amount of $600,000. And that funding is anticipated for access in federal fiscal year 2021-22. Now, the clarification is that rescinding the MIG agreement doesn't necessarily forfeit our access to those federal funds. We do, however, in going forward in the future to access those funds, have obligations embedded in the federal program that we would be required to do. And principally, that would be to engage or perform a environmental review in compliance with NEPA. That's the federal version of CEQA, as well as CEQA itself. And components of that process would involve engagement with the public, scoping out the project, thoroughly defining its limits. It would involve completing the environmental review and obtaining both NEPA and CEQA clearance. And then subsequent steps to that would be moving forward with the final design of the project, at which time then we would submit all our compliance documentation to the state and request an authorization to go forward with construction. And again, as I pointed out earlier, those federal funds in the future are for the construction phase only. So, to reiterate the recommendation tonight, it is for you to receive this report as you have, and to provide a recommendation to staff concerning the professional service agreement with MIG for the Healdsburg Avenue study. And with that, I'd like to invite MIG to come forward and give their presentation.
Thank you, Mario, and thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. We sincerely appreciate this opportunity to very briefly present the Healdsburg Avenue Improvement Study proposal. MIG, as you may know, is a planning, design, and engineering firm with a bedrock foundation of community engagement, so that any and all improvements that we recommend, physical, social, cultural, economic, are all based on reflecting community values as well as community aspirations. The key members of the MIG team are present here. My name is Mukul Malhotra. As Mario said, I will serve as the project manager. Also, our Tom Wonschader, who is our chief engineer as well as designer for Complete Streets, as well as Carolyn Verheyen, who leads our community engagement efforts and also leads our Kenwood office. Complete Streets, as you know, is all about making all users of the street, with no exception, equal users of the streets. They are pedestrians, bicyclists, transit users, drivers, you name it. And we have worked to make sure that in cities such as West Sacramento, where West Capitol Avenue, very similar to what is on Healdsburg Avenue, where people were crossing in the middle of the street to access basic amenities, parks, so and so forth, gets transformed where all users feel safe, they feel convenient, and they have a desirable environment. And most importantly, the most vulnerable users of our streetscape environments, namely our children, elderly, as well people of disabilities, become equal users of the street and are not dominated by any other user. Similarly, we have done it in Adeline Street. Again, the challenge was very similar, converting and looking at opportunities of converting 4 to 5 lanes of street into something where children going to school, be it walking or bicycling, could do that on their own. And there were improved connections all along the corridor as the city of Emeryville was getting a lot of new development, as we are seeing also along Healdsburg Avenue. And then, of course, in Paso Robles, 21st Street, which is their main street, looking at opportunities of creating a community main street that reflects the aspirations of the community. We have worked in different parts of the country, but one of the key things that we have kept in mind is that the solutions that are created are not the solutions of today or tomorrow only, but they keep into account the advancements that are happening. Specifically, I would say the multimodal improvements that are happening, but also most importantly, the new horizon of autonomous driverless cars. So as we are designing our streets all over the state as well as the country, we are making sure that they keep into account any and all future opportunities that exist. And that is based on the technological advancements, but also how we are constructing our streets today. And that is something that we do bring to the table as we will explore opportunities to design Healdsburg Avenue. But there is no fixed solution. Every corridor is different, and what we do bring to the table that every area needs to be studied, and it has a unique quality. Healdsburg Avenue has a unique quality. It changes its character, its look, its feel, its right-of-way, the number of lanes, and any and all solutions needs to be equitable, inclusive, but also needs to reflect the unique assets, issues, and challenges as it moves from one end of the corridor to the other end of the corridor. We have already walked the corridor a number of times. Tom and I took a couple of hours walking the corridor, besides, of course, driving the area. And that really helps us create very strategic and context-sensitive solutions. We have already started brainstorming some ideas, but the graphic that you see is really something for the city of Carnation, Tolt Avenue, where the solutions were based on not just the unique assets and opportunities, but also keeping into account how do we actually get it built? What are the grants that are available? What is the low-hanging fruit? And then what are going to be the higher capital investment costs? And the MIG as a firm has worked with cities all over the state to get more than $27 million in just state-level grants, and that's something that what we are trying to aspire in this project too. The basis of this entire project is going to be making sure that there's a very meaningful process and community engagement. In our proposal, we had proposed various high-touch and high-tech strategies. Our bottom line is to reach to the silent majority. We have a lot of great community folks who participate in various meetings, but we also want to make sure, and this is what has made the cities that we have worked in better, is when the silent majority steps up and becomes equal participants in the entire process. This is the case of in Long Beach or in Laguna Beach or in San Jose, where through the Mapita survey, we got over 450 responses in 4 weeks. And they're location specific, and they tell you what people want at which corner of the street and where do they live and work within the corridor also. And so overall big picture, the existing conditions would take about 3 months. Coming up with the visioning and alternatives, looking at what the community wants, would take about 2 to 3 months. Mario mentioned the need to do CEQA and NEPA analysis and coming up with the draft plan, taking another 6 months along with preliminary design and cost estimates, with the entire process, including public hearings and adoption, being handled in about 18 months. And with all humility, I would like to just say one last thing. MIG is a nationally recognized experts. We do have a keen understanding of complete streets. We would very sincerely and humbly would like to explore opportunities working for the beautiful city of Healdsburg, but more importantly, working for the community of Healdsburg as you embark on your new ventures. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So are we open to some questions now? I'm sure.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Councillor McCaffrey would start out.
Yeah, this is a question for Mr. Landeros. Are there any more specific design requirements for the One Bay Area grant, or is it just the CEQA, the NEPA, and all that stuff? Or is there more specific design elements that are required for that, for participation in that grant?
I would say the answer is no. These are local projects that are tapping into federal funding programs, transportation in this case, and the onus, if you will, on the community, on the project sponsor, is to comply with the procedural requirements, satisfying the environmental concerns, engaging the public, and there are a host of other elements, civil rights compliance, for example. There's some provisions on specifications of materials made in America for steel components and so forth. But other than that, it is a local project to the community's desires and to the city's adopted standards.
Do you have an idea or a few ideas of what you were going to spend the grant money on, the $600,000? I know that doesn't go real far for engineering projects or street improvements. Are there some specific ideas of what we want that money for?
Well, with these federal programs, there's always a local match component. So theoretically, that or in practicality, it would the construction budget would be beyond that $600,000 amount. But having said that, one of the tasks within MIG's scope of services is to develop a logical, sequential phasing, if you will, and providing recommendations on where to target this, these initial expenditures. This overall project, for the limits identified from Powell Avenue up to the northerly city extremes, it's something that would be implemented over time. It would also, if things were to play out the way are expected, it would provide a guideline and plan line for those sections of Healdsburg Avenue. And so as development comes in, they too would be obligated to comply with this plan and do their part, if you will. But the specific project that would be done with this federal funding, that would be something that would is yet to be determined.
Councilor Niyokis.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do feel a bit of a responsibility for the one who kind of instigated this, so I appreciate everybody's time here, and I appreciate MIG's time coming up to present to us. I think one of the concerns I had when I originally asked for this was how this was going to interact potentially with the STAT process. Now we know it's not potential; it's real. I have other related questions, but maybe if I could just start with that, and maybe if you could talk to that, whoever wants to, how this process is going to intersect with the STAT process, if at all.
We actually think these two projects are complementary. The SDOT project, which is fantastic, you guys are really going to enjoy it. It's an amazing opportunity. But the way we understood it, and we looked at some of the documents, the SDAT looks at the citywide level. And this project is really very specific, and it's addressing a need, what we identified based on when we walked and drove along the corridor, are very immediate safety needs, which can be part of the STAT, but in some ways are complementing the project itself. So, and Tom, who has worked on a couple of STAT projects, can talk more about that.
Yeah, I think the way that they intersect is going to be kind of interesting, and it's going to be something that we can drive. I actually talked to the director a couple of weeks ago, and Erin was saying she was really glad that they like to come to nice towns every once in a while. Generally, they come to communities that are experiencing problems and stuff. And when I've done 4 of them in Pittsburgh and a couple of places, and the last one they took me to was in the Virgin Islands. So I think that's your category. The volunteers that come here, they want to get a nice place for people to these volunteers to enjoy. But as we move through this thing, the STAT process is going to, if they do focus on North Healdsburg at all, is going to be something that's pretty general. And what's going to happen is that there going to be a suggestion to say, well, these are the kind of things that we need. We're going to dig into the weeds and get into those things. So it can guide us a little bit as much as we want, but it's not going to give the kind of meat and the bones that we would need to move the process forward.
And we would, if the two projects go together, what we would do is we would take the cues from what the overarching planning process that's happening as part of the START process, because it's creating those overarching community values, and weave those values into this Healdsburg Avenue project. But then take it to the next level of going into the minutia of the design. How do we take the overarching recommendations of the STAT project into this? Think of it in a way that you are thinking big picture, but at the same time, which is what STAT is doing, but at the same time, this project is action plan number 1, getting implemented as the STAT is being done. Did we answer your question?
A bit. I think I'm looking at schedules, so if we can maybe getting a little bit more specific, right? So we just heard that the STAT process, well, there's going to be initial meet with the team lead and the steering committee in February, and then with some idea formulation between that time and the next round should be in May and June with a full team that's assembled from AIA. How does that schedule merge with with your plans and is with regard to what you just mentioned?
So we personally are very flexible with the schedule, but when we started to think based on what we just heard about 15-20 minutes ago, one of the things that came to my mind, for example, while the initial thing is happening, the February meeting is happening, and the preparation of the May meeting is happening, the Healdsburg Avenue project is working on the existing condition analysis. So there's a lot of data we need to gather for this project, and that does take a fair bit of time. And so we do that, and then our next process is to think about visioning and alternatives. But before we even go into alternatives, is the big picture visioning. That's where the two projects dovetail together beautifully. Because as the ESTAT is establishing what does the city really require, big picture wise, we are looking, and they're looking at the whole city level, 4.5 mile level. We are looking at one linear corridor level, but we are taking the cues. It's no different than what we would take the cues from what overarching documents you have in the city right now, be it design guidelines or your general plan, that will inform and influence us. This is another key critical document or process, the ESTAT process, that will influence our project.
Okay. Right. So one of the things that's really the meat of what we're talking about here is questions from the community about how to use a particular piece of land, right? In particular, is Healdsburg Avenue from top to bottom to the Powell. So you're establishing. I was interested in some of the processes that you have as part of your methodology, specifically the MAPITA MAPtionnaire process. What I find interesting and curious is how that could actually be leveraged. What you're doing with this project can be leveraged beyond when you walk away to help us continue that conversation about other places where we need input on public land uses.
That's a fantastic idea, and that's something that that we have worked with other cities, and they've done it very successfully. Because what MAPITA does is, and we're not beholden to this one particular program. We use it because it's maximum bang for the buck. But like I said, it reaches out to the silent majority. But more importantly, it is a multi forum opportunity to look at improvements that you want to see at different levels. For example, when we use MAPITA, say for a general plan or more specifically for a park and rec plan, we ask the community members, what are the existing challenges and issues you have with your existing parks and rec? They provide, they think we don't like this area, this playground, so on and so forth. We take it to the next level as part of the project, where they say, well, we would like to see these kind of improvements in our open spaces. Great. When the project is done, and the project has recommended improvements based on what we have heard in MAPITA and other community forums, the cities then take it to the next level. And then because, a lot of the cities make the changes that are proposed by, say, the Park and Rec plan, but they want a very dynamic tool. And we do offer that to the city, that they can then go for a third survey, a fourth survey. And you can change the scale of the survey once you put it, because we'll be using the city's existing GIS data. That is what it is based on. And that's the other thing that's very fungible from being very website or just cell phone or any sort of laptop PC friendly. But it goes back and the city uses it as very quantifiable GIS data. You could use it for your land use planning, you name it. But it can be, it's very location specific in addition to providing other benefits like surveys like SurveyMonkey do.
Okay, thank you. One of the topics you mentioned was the fact that you will be very conscientious of grant phasing and the complexities and implementation practicalities, right? Can you speak a bit about how you are going to when evaluating the project, how you're going to consider existing grant opportunities? You mentioned NEQA and CEBA for transportation, but there's all kinds of other opportunities like stormwater management. I think that's going to be a huge deal.
Absolutely, and that's something that is very important to us. Yes, and we are very honest with the staff, with the stakeholders, with elected officials and community members, based on what the palette of improvements that the community would like to see. We always, as part of our existing condition analysis, try to understand what can be funded by the city's existing revenues, and then where all, which is mostly the case with most of cities in California, do we have to go after grants? And when we work on the design, we always look at very specifically how will this project get implemented, because we do not have the money to implement the dreams that the community members have. Having said that, our team has a very consistent record of getting funds from different sources, be it the Caltrans active transportation funds, which when we design, we keep into account that the concrete work, I'm speaking in very layman's term, will be done by the Caltrans grant. So let's start to focus on that. The other one is sustainability, looking at stormwater improvements, just decreasing the heat energy, the heat elements, the California urban greening grants. In fact, Tom and I just worked with the city of Richmond, and we got $4.2 million urban greening grants for the city of Richmond for the Iron Triangle neighborhood, which is based on the grant that that we helped the city, Fair and Pierce, who's a team member, get for the active transportation grants. So they had a budget of $12 million. We got from active transportation for the concrete work, which is very expensive, we got about $8.5 million. And from the urban greening, we got 4.2. That is a good example of how, looking from day one, looking at multiple sources, we were able to get the whole thing funded.
Thank you. And then another question is, you kind of touched on it just now, and also in the presentation. Do you have ways of measuring the actual outcomes? Let's talk about stormwater, right? Reducing the quantity of stormwater going into False Creek. What other ways, or reducing the 85th percentile speed on Healdsburg Avenue? What other kinds of measurable outcomes can we expect to see from this?
So in terms of stormwater, it is very quantifiable. How we manage the stormwater flow control into the creek and water quality. There's best practices that we use. Just to go back to your funding issue too, is that the project that we did in Paso Robles was paid in part through the city taking money they would have had to put. They were fined for an illicit discharge into the Salinas River, and we messed that around and moved that around and used that to do a road project to put in to start cleaning stormwater. And like I say, that it is very quantifiable. The best management practices are the C3 rules tell you that you need this much treatment area for this much hard surface areas and stuff like that. So yeah, they're all quantifiable.
Okay.
And just to address the question you asked, Council Member, besides speed, which is easy to monitor before and after, the second is we specifically, and this is where our group is very qualified, is to measure what was the before and after improvement in stormwater quality, but also the amount of stormwater capture that's happening before and after during, say, a 2-year or a 10-year event. The other things that we do measure, and we have numbers for the different projects, and we have written papers for different transportation organizations, but we also measure, and what is going to be very critical out here is the safety component of it, which is to say, looking at the SWITR data today, but then, within 1 year or 2 years of the project getting completed, how has the collision data decreased for all modes of travel, the drivers, the pedestrians, the bicyclists, so on and so forth. And then, of course, as part of, say, if you go after the stormwater, the urban greening resources grant, you have to quantify how are you reducing the greenhouse gas emission. It is a critical component of it, and you have to monitor it. The state demands it. So therein lies, if we get the grant in the future, we will have to make sure that we are meeting the targets.
Great, thank you. That's really helpful. Two very minutiae points. In the plan, you mentioned, I think that might have been a typo, that phase 2 hours and tasks are not included in the work budget.
Yes, that was the initial
right.
submittal
Draft.
that we made, but then we modified that afterwards. So
right. So it does. The phase 2 is included as that the summary of charges and work at the very end.
Phase 2
really is accurate.
Phase 2 being, I think it's taking the project, developing the concept to like a 20%.
Right.
Yes, that's in the budget.
And that's leads into my next question: is why? What's the 30%? Why did you choose the 30% of civil?
That was in the RFP.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
One of the things that we did do on this, and I had talked to a number of city staff, was we had initially suggested that it might make more sense for us to do this in 2 phases because we could. Sorry, it might make more sense for us to do this in 2 phases because once we get a preferred alternative, then we can focus where we need to do survey and where we need to do geotechnical work, rather than doing that all in one phase. It's just get our concept design down, and then be able to target the other services that we would need to move the project into concept design in 20.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Just real quick, mine are a little less technical, but questions that have come up. I drive that stretch every day because I live up in Parkland Farms, and I know the road's pretty bad. So just in terms of, and this might be more for the city, is immediate needs, because I understand we don't want to throw good money after bad. And, you know, there are potholes that fill with water that I love driving through with my Jeep that need to be fixed. But how are we kind of looking at that when, you know, this takes into account stormwater, you know, infrastructure underneath, and, you know, it's a pretty big scope. And we kind of had the same thing when we were doing the surface repairs this summer is, you know, all right, if we're going to do it, let's do it right. What do we do within the next 18 months? Because the road's not getting any better.
Well, those types of conditions, they clearly need to be addressed through our typical street maintenance. We go out and fill potholes. Healdsburg Avenue gets a little more challenging because of I think the high frequency of vehicles, the speeds, and those conditions. So any pothole work that's done, it's very typically it's at best temporary solution and approach. So it's what we continue doing throughout, and with the staff as limited as it is, it addresses the higher priorities. I hate to say it, where you get the most outcry, most complaint or service request, but that's how we would address that in the immediate. As far as any longer term solution, say some sort of a grinding and overlay, that's when we start getting into those challenges of, as you put it, throwing good money after bad. So I think our tasks at hand are to try to at least keep the surfaces safe, addressing those types of issues as they come up. And we may miss them, but we do respond to those requests as they come up. I don't know if that thoroughly addresses your
I think generally, and what I'm looking for is, we've got this 18-month time frame. So say we go through this, how far out in the future are we looking to start seeing some of these things happen? Because I know they're tied to grants and, different things. That was kind of where I was going with that.
Obviously, as you mentioned, this whole process goes over quite a long time span from this contract through all the ultimate construction. So we do have the obligation to maintain the street, the portions of the street that aren't being rebuilt at the time, so that they're safe, passable. I guess probably the best thing the best thing I could say is I did do an estimate of looking at the whole street from Powell all the way up to Parkland Farms Boulevard, and if we did the same type of treatment we've been doing on the other streets in town, which is the chip seal and the microsurfacing, and figuring about 20% of the street would have some pavement replacement. It's about $3.1 million. So you don't get away from all that through this process because, like I said, you have to maintain the street as you're going and improving the segments of it as it gets divided up.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for everything that you're doing. I want to check in with you about a couple things. First of all, the comment about maximum bang for the buck. We are looking for the same thing. We want to get the maximum for our buck. There's two things for me that don't make sense, but I think I'm starting to understand the connection. One is that we have a problem on Healdsburg Avenue in the sense that we have literally an inferior street that goes, I would say, I'll just start at Powell and goes north. And there is a map, and I'm looking at this huge screen, and I really wish we had the map up because the people that weather this late, it would be nice to see the map of what was actually sent forth for the $600,000 grant. And I've sent it to all the council members. I wish people could see it because I'm a visual learner and I have to see something. I can't talk in abstractions. I do know the street. I've ridden my bike. My children went to what used to be Foss Creek Elementary School, and there are sidewalks. My biggest question is the merge of the $600,000 grant that, again, I've read as of last night, the one Bay Area grant application. And thank you for explaining more about that today. But I did talk to Suzanne Smith. I am on the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. This grant was granted in May under what was called a geographical equity rationale, which meant there was $20 million that was granted to Sonoma County, and apparently they gave us $600,000 grant for this because we were wise enough to ask for some money for this issue of Northern Healdsburg. So if you look at the grant, and I hope my fellow council members will, one of the issues was including, and this is what it says, key project element will include reducing number of vehicle lanes from 5 to 3 lanes. So essentially one of the key project elements was that, but will they hold us to that? Well, no, because they gave us it based on a value of geographical equity, which means they wanted to give Healdsburg something. What I do know is there has to be integrity when you write a grant, and it did say in the grant application that we put forth that we were going to move forward to create some kind of a PDA, which is a project development agreement with something. And what I really am concerned about is getting this road up to speed for people in cars right now. As much as we want to envision the future, at 57 years of age, I know what I need still, which is a road that's traveled and that I can be on my bicycle. So what I would love, and I just got my information, how much do we estimate the cost of repaving Healdsburg Avenue from Powell to even just the community center? And that's what did you say, $31 million? Just kidding, 3.1 million?
3.1.
Well, it's just a few zeros, right?
Yeah.
So, when we talk about what costs are, I know there's an element of just let's get a vision and let's spend $450,000 with MIG. I'm glad you're here, by the way. I really appreciate that when we're being asked to spend that kind of money. It's good for us to be able to have you here. So I hope that, in the future, if you're proposing anything, I would really love it if you'd come because it makes a difference when you're here. I mean, our people are competent, but you're asking us to invest in a plan that you're going to be directing. And the stakeholder part is fascinating to me. It's a big part of why I got into government is all that community engagement that's going to cost $53,000. So I guess what I want, and I'm not being smart, I just want to know, while I appreciate the cost it takes to have experts like yourselves to help us make the plan, I'm still not convinced that we're getting the maximum bang for our buck. And I'm still not convinced that with the ADIA or the SDAT coming in, that we want to take this stakeholder, that again, $53,000 worth of stakeholder time for you guys to put together some ways to ask all the people that are living in the area, or just maybe you're going to include the whole town, to talk about whether or not, for example, we want to change the conditions of that street and make it a two-way street rather than the 4 lanes. We're going to have 2. I'm not sure about all that. I don't know exactly how much it costs to ask people that question. I know there's there's CEQA. I know that there's environmental things going on at the national level. Who knows what's going to happen with President Trump with all these things, but I think the bottom line with me is I'm not convinced that this plan is the plan that we need right now. So I've really tried to stay open-minded, but I just wanted to know how much it would cost to actually pave it. I just got that information. I want a bicycle path. I really would appreciate, that's what I hear from the community. Get a bicycle path so we don't just have that sidewalk the way it is. So I'm just wondering, and again, I don't want to be condescending, but I'm very concerned about losing $600,000, which is construction money. It will not pay for your fees at MIG to do the work that we know we need to get done. And I'm grateful for your work. You've done great projects. I've looked at all of them. I've tried to anyway on your website, just see what you've done. But again, if I just wish this map could be shown, this visual map of our town, our street, which used to be called Old Redwood Highway. And when we look at it and we try and understand what do we want to envision there, do we want to take away that artery that allows for cars to go back and forth? So my concern is, do we fear losing $600,000 because we don't know if this geographically based equity grant from one? I'm concerned about that. Like, do they have to fit together? And I heard Engineer Landros say that it's not connected. I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong, your last name. It's really important to me that we don't get mixed up here and think we have to take the jump, because if we take the jump, we're going to get something quicker, when honestly, I think what we need is a repaved Healdsburg Avenue with a bike lane up north. And all the other stuff, I'm not sure we even have the money to actually do the plan after you create the plan. So, I'm not sure what to say other than I'm not convinced, and I don't feel like the stakeholder meetings and the work that your firm is going to provide really serves for where we are right now. And I just feel like with everything going on, I don't feel really comfortable jumping into this plan and beginning stakeholder sessions when we're already going to be inviting people to do stakeholder sessions for other reasons. So I don't know, I just feel tentative about supporting this, and I did not vote for it before. And I didn't vote for it because I felt like it was too expensive of a plan for what we were going to get. Now that it's connected to a $600,000 grant, it makes me nervous to want to give that up, but I don't think I have to. So that's my question is, do we have to give up the plan to get, the money? Do we have to use MIG in order to get the $600,000? And that's something that our creative staff possibly could answer. I don't know, but it feels like MIG's got great product. I know they can do it, but I worry about the expense to get there. And I don't know if we have the money to even get the plan that they want us to get. So I bring that up because I have reservations about spending money on something that may not serve us in the long run, especially changing the lanes. I'm not sure how that would work as a major artery for our town. So that's my concern, and thanks for letting me share that. I don't really know what else to say other than.
You want to take public comment?
Going to open. Would you like to do that? Yes? Okay. All right. Is anyone here to speak from the public on the issue of the MIG?
Bruce Abramson, Healdsburg. This is confusing, I think, some to the public. You may know more than I have on this, but I'm concerned whether if you accept this MIG proposal, are you pre-committing the city to a 3-lane version versus the 5-lane? The report from council here and also on here says it appears to be underutilized, Healdsburg Avenue. And then it goes on to say that the project application, key elements will include reducing the number of lanes from 5 to 3. So I haven't heard anybody talk about that except for the mayor here. I'm a resident. I've lived 28 years in the North End. I go up and down that street every day, Healdsburg Avenue. My concern is reducing it from 5 to 3. For what purpose? What purpose? I see a lot of issues here. When this started 5 years ago, there were 4 council members who are not here now, and they had a vision of what they thought would happen. And now we're looking at the demographics. Has anybody done a demographic study? Have they presented it to you or to the community? Do we know about the declining school population? Does anybody talk about the increase in hotels and residential units and more commercial on the north end? There's going to be a tremendous surge of growth activity, which is going to mean a lot more traffic, a lot more cars. So why are we considering reducing this from 5 to 3 and accepting MIG? Are you telling the community that basically you are going to 3 lanes? That's what the application says here. Nobody's discussed it. It makes me feel a little bit quizzical about, is this kind of being slipped in or not? It's not being slipped in from what I see here, but nobody talks about this right here. So my big concern, on the north part of town, there are thousands of residents that are going to be affected off of Ferraro, Monte Vista, Terrace, Sunnyvale, Paul Whitkey, and Parkland Farms Boulevard. They all empty out onto Healdsburg Avenue. Has anybody talked to these people? And you're considering something going from 5 to 3 at this point? So maybe somebody can answer me on that particular question. And part of the issue is that there could be backups at traffic lights. There could be more difficult left turn lanes. There could be multiple light weights. These are all issues that people are going to ask you about if you go to 3. Also, I caution you to wait. The roundabout has been difficult. And people are kind of wondering, whose fault is it, or this or that or whatever. It's been costly. That street coming in is a 3-lane that's being proposed. We don't know what the backup is going to be. Everybody's crossing their fingers hoping that that backup from the roundabout is not going to go right onto the off-ramp on Healdsburg Avenue. So I want you to think about that. That hasn't come to play, and you're considering this to 3 lanes. So I would ask you to caution this, maybe table it, and get more demographics or get this study done from the ASAT. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Good evening. My name is Ariel Kelly, and I live on Grove Street. I read through this proposal the first time around, and I think that the north end of town is really, as Bruce mentioned, an area that there's a lot of, with the addition of Parkland Farms a decade plus ago, and then the new homes that are being built on that end of town, and the affordable housing that's being built on Grove Street on the north end of town, and the increased activity happening at the community center, I think that there is a great opportunity to have multimodal transportation along Healdsburg Avenue, bikes and pedestrians and cars. And I think it's very short-sighted of us to say that we're all going to be in our cars all the time commuting from the north end of town south. And if we really did create a streetscape along Healdsburg Avenue that was inviting for pedestrians and bicyclists, that you felt safe on your bicycle and you felt safe walking and crossing that street, I think it would give residents the opportunity to get out of their cars. I know that there are many times when I think about riding my bike with my kids and I don't, because I don't feel like there's a safe way to get up and down Healdsburg Avenue. I feel safe in certain parts of town, but Healdsburg Avenue is not one of those areas. It's pretty much a highway when you get north of Powell Street, the way that even though cars are going slow, it's very wide and it's hard to cross. And so while I think that the study and the plan that it's being proposed, it's not a construction plan. It's not we're going to start digging tomorrow. It's we're going to put a large amount of time into creating a plan that would later get built should it be adopted formally and should additional development happen on the north end of town. I don't think we can afford as a community now, based on the emotional tax of the roundabout construction, to start construction now on the north end of town. But I don't think that's what's being proposed here whatsoever. I think it's let's create a plan so that we don't continue to put money into the north end of town when really there's a way to envision it as a beautiful entry point for our city. And I think right now, I would be shocked if anyone thinks that Healdsburg Avenue, at least north of Dry Creek Road, is a beautiful street. It is 5 lanes of potholes and just lines. And there's really some amazing things that MIGs and others do around the country, around California, to make streets like that feel beautiful and like a place you'd actually want to sit outside on a sidewalk and drink a cup of coffee and park your bike and not feel like you're about to get run over. So I really do think there's some great potential to envision what that entry point of town looks like And as additional housing or apartments or whatever happens on the north end of town get built, people may start to use the Lytton Springs exit to come from that end towards town, or use the Dry Creek Road exit off the 101 instead of driving through town. And I think it's a beautiful intention to set, that we really want that to be a not neglected part of our community, but to make it feel like we've put thought and energy into it. And I think that's what this proposal is. Yes, it's very expensive, but it was just as expensive as the other two proposals that were put forth. And I hope that the community engagement work can happen in conjunction with the SDAT community engagement, so we do get more bang for our buck on community engagement. If they're going to be pulling stakeholders together, let's really use that as an opportunity to catalyze the movement. But I do appreciate what they're trying to do, and I don't think that we should be afraid of going from 5 lanes to 3 until we really get more information. And they're the experts, which is why we're paying them as much as we're paying them, and I trust them. Thanks.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Richard Berg, Fitch Street. I think it'd be a really bad idea to forego approving this contract with MIG. If you look at the $600,000 anticipated in 21-22, what it does seem to require is a plan to apply it to, since it's only for construction. To redo this section of Healdsburg Avenue requires looking at a lot of different elements of that streetscape. And that needs to be done thoughtfully and at depth. So the fact that the SDAT is occurring at the same time, I would just hope that coordinating with MIG, especially in terms of stakeholder involvement, because the last thing you want is citizen fatigue when being asked to come and say, what do you think we should do? That they move slowly such that, I don't have the calendar in front of me, that their engagement process occurs in the fall, not in the summer, because what the SDAT is going to require is a fairly intense level of activity in the months leading up to May and June. And they could do all their preliminary work. The gentleman did say that they're not time-bound, that they have a great deal of flexibility, and I hope that's true, to take their project and spread it out a little so that it begins with the SDAT and then comes together with the SDAT, but doesn't necessarily overlap in terms of its demands upon citizens to participate and allow their voices to be heard. And in terms of thinking about the upper portion of Healdsburg Avenue from Powell all the way out to the end of town, it feels like some god-awful boulevard in one of the suburbs of Sacramento, where what you expect to see on the side of the road are endless strip malls. It's way too wide, and it's not about backups. I mean, the roundabout has proven that backups are solved by roundabouts, and the likelihood of there being backups to the off-ramp of the freeway is highly unlikely unless there's an accident or some other event. And I think that's been proven, given that it has not provided backups in the most horrific of conditions, where the circle seems to move every third week, 10 feet this way, 10 feet that way. And finally, I think you have to recognize that this level of planning for complete streets to accommodate pedestrians and bicyclists as well as cars, and anticipate the future of transportation, a shuttle from Saggio Hills, a shuttle from the new hotel on Dry Creek, means less traffic, not more traffic. And the other reason not to postpone this is the RJW site is under consideration for development. Saggio Hills is in an unknown state as far as I know. And those things both have to be, the roads to those places have to be improved, and it should be done in a planned manner. Thank you.
Welcome.
Hi, I'm Mark McMullen. I am apparently representing Parkland Farms. We are very much in favor of this study. This is a study. It's going to take 18 months to complete, and they're going to look at everything. They're going to look at Foss Creek. They're going to look at what's underneath the road right now. They're going to figure out and give us advice on how we should develop this into a more transit and pedestrian-friendly place. This is the future. As Richard just said, we have developments that are going on at the very extreme north end of town. We've got the project that I think it's the Oaks at Foss Creek that are going to go in. There's going to be, with the Chiquita Grove development that's going in, we've got a whole bunch of traffic that's going to start plowing in there. We need to find alternatives to that. School buses are going to be stopping in those areas. We need to be thinking about the safety of the pedestrians and the bicyclists and the cars. And when the autonomous cars or the autonomous shuttles start coming in, we need to have roadways that are designed with those in mind. And this study is very important. I think that this is the future, and we can't claw back to the past. This is, as Richard said, it's just a big, wide, very dangerous roadway. There's 3 bus stops on the west side of Healdsburg Avenue, and it's very dangerous to try and cross. There's only 5 crossings between Powell and the northern city limits. It's a very dangerous place. This study will be helpful. It will help the residents that are currently there and the residents that are going to come there. So please, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Tim Unger, Plaza Street. When this was first spoken about in October, I think we were talking about fiscal responsibility and considering why the cost of this consulting agreement was as high as it is for what we were getting. I think Councilwoman Gold mentioned that don't we have people in-house that might be able to provide some of this expertise, which still remains unanswered. The looming gun to the head about potentially losing the $600K, I think we ought to study that and see if that's real or if that's just a lever in order to get the decision made. I think taking into account the fact that Californians don't want to give up their cars certainly speaks to the fact that if that weren't true, we'd have a much better mass transit system statewide than we do today. And the natural behavior of the driver is get in the car at the last minute and show up where they're supposed to be 5 minutes late, which is the way you see this room fill up every time we have a meeting. It's always at the clock striking 12 as opposed to people in large part getting here early. Maybe what we can do is segregate this consulting agreement and reduce the scope, which is what I thought we might be seeing today, and parse off the CEQA point, if that is what is required in order to maintain the $600,000 that we're anxious about losing, and potentially wait for the information that's going to be gleaned from the SDAT and leverage that in a mindful way to, as opposed to working in parallel, which I'm typically in favor of, working this serially to make sure we get the greatest bang for the buck. The town may also be suffering exhaustion around construction, taking into account what's recently gone on with the bridge, the roundabout, Replay Resort soon to happen, street repairs, Dry Creek Hotel, Comstock, which is likely going to be happening, and maybe even Sajo Hills, not to mention everything on Grove Street. So I'm hoping there's some thoughtfulness here, and I don't see why there's any need that this cannot be thinned down and pushed out a bit in order to make sure that we're operating from a position of knowledge and strength. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else from the public like to speak? Okay, I'm going to call the public input session over and come back to the council. Councilor McCaffrey, please.
So if I may interject, there was a question if staff could respond. I think the one question that I heard was from Mr. Abramson regarding, is it a foregone conclusion that this project will go to 3 lanes, if staff could respond to that.
No, it's not a foregone conclusion. It is a study, and in the process, the idea being that as the community speaks out and responds as to its desires, its needs, and taking into account all of these things, for MIG to come up with alternatives that the community can go forward then and make its decision. So, and this is typical in these types of projects where you're scoping out a project, looking forward, but once the community begins engaging and we go through that thoughtful, what would you call it, outreach process and taking an input, from that will come out the project, the subject of the environmental document, and then subsequently final design.
Councilor McCaffrey.
So that was one of my questions, but I have another one that's related to it. And the question is a 5-lane configuration that is similar to what's on that stretch of road right now and a 3-lane configuration, which one, is the 5-lane configuration always able to handle more traffic than the 3-lane configuration?
Wasn't planning on speaking today, but I do have a little experience here. And yes, if done right, and if the volumes are the right level of traffic volumes for those lanes, the 3 lanes certainly can handle the same traffic volume as 5. The rule of thumb typically with road diets is somewhere in the 20,000 is sort of the threshold, 20,000 average daily traffic that can take a road diet. We're approximately 10,000, I think, on Healdsburg. So there isn't a problem. It isn't just the 3 lanes, but there's also turn pockets. So you're handling the traffic in a different way. You don't get the backup of someone trying to make a left and then people trying to figure out that they're making a left and shifting over. They go into a left turn pocket. The through lane is the through lane. So traffic can continue to move, and that's the safety that everyone's been talking about too. There's fewer decisions for drivers to make. They're in the lane that tells them where they're going.
While you're up there, another question would be, does the width of the right-of-way as it is now to have 5 lanes and proper bike lanes? Is there enough bike lanes and sidewalks? Is there enough?
I believe there's plenty of width for that. From what I've seen, but I haven't looked at the actual dimensions.
Okay.
I'm on day 4.
Thanks. Hey, but you're a quick study. So, yeah, those were my questions. I had a few comments as well. First I want to start with just funding sources. Yes, there is development planned up in that area, and that happens to be one of the biggest funding sources for this kind of thing. Is take, for example, the Dry Creek 101 interchange was funded by the county, the city, through development fees and from Measure V, right? So, and from the development fees specifically from 110 Dry Creek. So if you have a large development going in, you can use that as leverage to help pay for that project and improve that road. So we're talking about a $600,000 grant that's off in the future somewhere that probably repeats every so often. And if you have a plan like this, you can grab more. And then there's other grants. If you have a plan, you can. And also, we just passed this big gas tax in California, and hopefully, it doesn't get repealed. But that's a big source of income for this kind of thing too. So, funding sources, I think, unless you have a detailed plan like this, you can't really say, well, see that road over there? We want to do this. Well, if you have this document and all the CEQA and everything, then you can say, okay, let's do it. Another thing is someone talked about coming from a position of knowledge and strength. I mean, what's better to create a position of knowledge and strength than to study this area with public input, our input, everybody's input, and figure out what we want, right? I think a lot of people here are talking about this like it's a construction project, like it's a done deal. It's an 18-month thing. The roundabout, knock on wood, is going to be done by that time. And now we have all these people to the north of town who have this very poor roadway to travel. And, you know, I'm talking about people, pedestrians, bicycles, you know, Chiquita Grove, Canyon Run, Parkland Farms, Quarry Ridge, unincorporated Sonoma County. A lot of people use that to go up to areas off of Alexander Valley Road. I see it all the time when I'm driving there. And this also, the parcels included in here include the community center, which is a big topic of discussion over the last 10 years of what do we do with that. It includes several sites identified as affordable housing. It includes several sites identified as a homeless service center. It includes the food pantry and the Foss Creek pathway extension. It also, you look at the condition of the current roadway, and it's a moonscape. And so everybody who has to drive that has to deal with this. And so if we're looking at people traveling by bike, by foot, by car, I mean, this whole thing needs to be improved. I mean, it's clear. I remember just this last week, Councilmember Neokas and I spoke with a gentleman who interviewed for the Senior Advisory Commission. He said he lived in Parkland Farms, and he felt like he was in Cloverdale. You know, he said, remember, he was like, I don't even feel like I'm part of town. I wish I was downtown. So how can we make this more connected? This, right here. And, you know, I just think that the SDAT thing is great. You know, that's an awesome thing, and I'm so happy that it was granted. And I want to thank Denise and everybody, and Richard and everybody who's working on that. And I think that's going to be something that is going to meld really well with this. And I don't know about, I have a feeling that the SDAT is going to talk about, or, you know, I don't know. I don't even want to go there, but I know that they're going to want more affordable housing. I know they're going to want homeless services. I know they're going to want a food pantry. And I know they're going to want the Foss Creek pathway extended. So leveraging this with the SDAT, I think, is a great idea. And I'm totally in favor of continuing down this path.
Anyone else? Councilor
Yes. So this is the Healdsburg Community Entries Revitalization Plan. It's dated 2003. It was developed during my previous tenure on council, and it includes plans for 4 areas, from the southern entrance to Healdsburg to the Memorial Bridge, an L-shaped section from the central exit to the roundabout and to Mill Street, to that freeway on-ramp, from the Dry Creek on-ramp to Healdsburg Avenue, and a section of Healdsburg Avenue from Chiquita Road up to the city limits, incorporating entry to Parkland Farms, Boulevard, Sajo Hills, and the forthcoming development on Mr. Comstock's property. It includes pictures a lot like this: elevations, streetscapes, planning, pretty elaborate landscape planning, design guidelines. And it includes pretty elaborate cost estimations for each segment, which, as you can imagine, are not very relevant right now. So when we made this, we felt pretty happy that we had a document that could guide us when future developers came in with proposals. We'd say, yes, you have to follow this plan that we have approved. A few years later, when I was off the council approved a boat and RV storage facility on our Southern Guide entryway, which I felt was completely out of conformance with the plan that we had made, and it really made me wonder about the utility of the whole exercise. So I'm not against a plan for Healdsburg Avenue. I think we should definitely do one. I would certainly hope that if you're working on this, that you will look at this previous document and you take advantage of the work that's already been done. I would hope that we would make sure that any plan that we completed was actually implemented. And I would advocate for not planning way more than we can currently foreseeably execute, because things change, councils change, citizens change, staff changes, everything changes. And if you're looking 10 years down the road, odds are whatever it is you planned is going to have to be pretty extremely revised. So I'm in favor of a conceptual plan. I would like to see it very carefully planned, that it doesn't go way deeper and into a lot of stuff that we just can't currently execute. I don't want to pay for more planning than we can foreseeably execute. I think that the SDAT certainly has to be taken into consideration, that we either want to postpone the community outreach till after the SDAT, or we want to do it as a joint effort so we don't duplicate. So I do think that community engagement number of $50,000 is something that seems a bit like a lot, considering our staff can certainly contribute to that effort. Other little, I don't want to go, break it down bit by bit, but the $11,000 kickoff meeting kind of stands out to me. Maybe we don't need quite that many, maybe we don't need the participation of every team member at that kickoff meeting. Maybe we could do that a little more expensively. There's things like that, but these are details, and the big picture is just, I think I've stated it. I don't think I need to restate it. Thank you.
First, just wanted to thank you for coming up and doing the presentation. A couple things. Yeah, what was interesting was the entryway revitalization plan back in 2003 that Councilmember Gold was pointing out. These are some of the highlights that were in there, which is the proposed improvements to enhance each entryway and link it to the overall community. Reduce vehicle congestion and speeds, improve bicycle and pedestrian access, reduce visual impacts of automobiles, underground overhead utilities. And this is back in 2003. And so there's a common theme that's been going along through all these reports. And I agree. I think, it's important to do this and we do it right. This has been a discussion point that's been going on for a long time. Again, I've said a couple times tonight, we're 4.5 square miles. We shouldn't have to drive everywhere. Not everybody can be get out of their car and ride their bikes, but that should be our goal, is to connect the different sections of Healdsburg so that we go back to this one Healdsburg, one community. We're all, we're not that big. On the public outreach part, I broke down the costs based on your estimates. So you've got, project management, $15,000, and project and background research, $19,000. For public outreach, the total of the entire contract is about 12%. And I actually appreciate the fact that the focus is on the public. Bruce made some good comments. I've heard others since this was initially approved back in October about concerns about what if there's a fire? These are all real questions that need to be addressed. And I like the fact that there is this focus on public outreach, and I don't think that's an area that we skimp on. It is important to get the public and the community input. I also like the fact that, I don't know if this is fate, that the SDAT got approved, so now that we know that for sure that the SDAT is going forward, but the timing seems to be lining up to where, the discussion about you have the overall vision of the community and what the community wants. And this is drilling us down, no pun intended, to a very specific portion that integrates these comments. And it sounded to me like just naturally, just the structure, you're going to be focusing on the infrastructure and some of the, the analysis where the SDAT's going on. So there is going to be some natural overlay. So, to me, this is smart money. I think it's important that we have a plan. This is, I wish this was fixing the road today. And I will continue to look at, working with staff on infrastructure projects and how we, what we can do now so that we don't throw good money after bad in terms of repairing and some of the potholes and that sort of thing. But I think it is important to have a long-term plan that takes into account the 2003 study that Councilmember Gold mentioned, the SDAT that we talked about, and all the other reports, and really focus on this section of town that continues to connect all the different areas and ultimately get us out of our cars. Thank you.
Councilman Neal.
Well, I guess first of all, Madam Mayor, I was wondering if you kind of left off, you had some concerns and about. I think what you're trying to say is, why not just pave it with some bike lanes? Is that kind of what it comes down? And what's the big deal about that? Why not just do that?
I'm staying in the flow tonight. I'm just I just found out last night about the grant and the impetus for that. I didn't know anything about the grant. So I'm learning as I get involved in this. I'm staying open to the flow. I'm listening to my public. But I'm also really concerned about what the end all is. And what I read for the $600,000 grant is that we are, in fact, the focus is to reduce the number of vehicle lanes. That's what it said. Now, maybe that's staying in the flow too, and they don't care. Sounds like when city manager asked the question, our engineer said, nope, we don't need to do that necessarily. Maybe MIG, after spending the money that we're going to spend for the plan, that particular thing won't be done all the way. I don't know. I'm just curious about the money expenditure and the end all. I am not satisfied with Northern Healdsburg Avenue. I do not think you should just continue to have it look like it does. I definitely understand, having children at that school up there, that's why that school ultimately probably closed down too, along with declining enrollment. Another issue and that's a big one, is the issue of not making it very easy to get there back and forth. And if our community center is valuable to us, yes, we need to get a way to get up there. So I just don't want to be falsely I don't want to be misunderstood. It's not the dichotomy of for us or against. It's not I'm against Northern Healdsburg Avenue getting money. I'm going to advocate for it as much as I can in the position on the Sonoma County Transportation Authority. This is a grant that came from them that I didn't even know about, and I don't know why. And I'm getting emails still from the director that's told me that I should have known about it. So I guess my question is, I don't understand why we're spending so much money for a future plan that we don't have the money for to do it, and I'd also just like to repair the road. So long-winded answer, Councilman Neokis, I just really wouldn't want to fix the road. And then, yeah, if you want to have a vision, can we carve it a little bit down so we don't spend so much money on this project? And that's why I originally said no to this plan. And I think the SDAT is something that can work in conjunction. And I think Richard Berg makes a good point. If he feels confident that he can work along with that community engagement, but I just feel like it's just all these things are coming at us, and I feel like we need to really be prudent with taxpayer money and make sure that we're getting the best for our money. And I'm glad they're here, and they're wise men and women that are doing the work. But I just don't know if I'm sold on the expense for what we're actually going to get quicker.
Yeah, thanks. That helps clarify. I want to make sure, because, yeah. Another thing, a thought that has come up as I'm listening to you all, a question for MIG and staff is, given maybe a better way of rephrasing my original question is, given the SDAT, would it be reasonable for us to say, okay, look, why don't you proceed with the existing conditions analysis? You got to gather that information anyway. That's independent of anything else. And that's going to take some time. In parallel to that, we've got the SDAT initial kind of interviews. Would it be reasonable and fair for you to come back after that initial gathering, maybe come back and say, after seeing what's happening with the SDAT process, after gathering this initial information, maybe we could rescope this a little bit. Maybe there's some economies from the SDAT process that we won't need to do that much public outreach because there's already that happening. Or you get my idea. Is that a reasonable ask? Is that can you counterbalance that or agree with it? Either.
So the short answer would be there are some economies of scale, but the level of detail that will be asked. So in terms of the overarching, how you want this corridor to be, what values, what community values does it need to reflect? That in some ways would be common to the estate, absolutely. So there's economy on scale. But a majority, a preponderance of the community engagement is going to be with the minutiae, with the detail of the design of the street. And that's what the community engagement is going to be on too. So yes, we will coordinate. And the other thing I think based on the council member's suggestion, we are happy to explore, because the estate is looking for funding sources too. If there are ways we can mix and use the same model or the media, whatever we want to call map it out, or estate comes up with something else, we are open to it, honestly. But we will be doing a much, much more detailed level of community feedback that we'll be requiring, which the estate will not go because it's at a city level.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that helps. Anything more to add from Ms. Landeros? Okay. So thanks for that indulgence. First of all, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, did Mr. Berg suggest that we do a roundabout at Dry Creek and Healdsburg Avenue? That was a joke. Okay, so with that, I'll go back to my original. I'm glad we had this opportunity to revisit this question with everything that's happened since we've last reviewed it. I think that I'll go back to my original statement. This is not just a street, right? It's a path. It's really a pathway with a capital P, and it's because of that, it really does require that real intensive thought process and engagement and outreach. I'm also specifically interested in looking at this from the different angles of the project, and how with those different angles we could start getting lots of different kinds of funding sources, like the stormwater, like the street reduction. I even think about the reducing the heat and the greenhouse gas emissions, obviously. So I think without having that comprehensive look, just focusing on paving and bike lanes, we're going to miss a lot of opportunities for that. On top of the opportunities for really establishing this as a way to unify Healdsburg as a one Healdsburg, which I love that concept. It reinforces to me that I'm comfortable with it, with qualifications, and I think that I would like to ask your support for asking the team to come back, check in with us after that initial, maybe in February, maybe March, maybe the first or second meeting in March. And I'll let the staff kind of, I'll defer to staff's judgment. But check back with us as the STEP progresses, and come back to us and say, this is what we've learned. Here's some ways that we recommend, that we can suggest, maybe tightening it up, reallocating some things, and just get a check-in. I'm not asking for anything, hard and fast. And then we can kind of have that review at that point and see where we are.
What specifically are you asking staff to do?
Staff to check in with us on the progress of this particular project, and how and whether and how we can potentially rescope or reschedule the project because of what we've learned from the STAT, based on the progress of the STAT project.
So there's a public outreach and meetings part of this where we could attend, and so I think that there's opportunities for us to be embedded and to see the wheels turning from inside the wheel, so to speak. So I think and then also kind of similar to how I think everybody except me has gone to the roundabout and kind of got a close look at that. I mean, I think I haven't seen in my tenure something where in the middle of a contract someone comes back and, a study like this, especially one with public outreach and all that, but, in an official setting. But there's always the opportunity to be part of it and to take your own initiative and go and check it out and that kind of thing. I mean, that's.
I hear you. I think I'm kind of again deferring to staff's judgment to say, based on on what we've seen going on, here are some suggestions from our professional perspective. That's a little bit different than us coming back and saying, well, I was at those meetings and I think we should do X, Y, and Z. That's where I'm getting.
So if I can interject, I think staff will regularly come back with updates during the public outreach process. Council is going to want to understand what's happening. So, as I almost called you Mayor, as Councilor McCaffrey just mentioned, we will be giving you normal updates. I think the other thing to remember is the SSTAT. We don't know exactly what the SSTAT is going to be focusing on at this point. So I think to connect these two is a bit premature until we have a complete understanding of when they come back in February to determine what that's going to look like. We just heard from MIG saying they're going to do the analysis over the next several months. So my guess is the public outreach probably won't even occur until after the SSTAT public outreach portion has occurred. And so I think there's going to be a logical progression for staff to come back and report out with regards to the progress that the MIG agreement or contract is moving forward with. So I think there's a logical progression for that. And from an economies of scale, of course, staff is always going to be working with our consultants to make sure that we're getting what we're paying for. And if there's ways to help tighten that, then of course staff will always be doing that. But I think staff will continue to come back through this process.
So, City Manager, what I need from you when we look at projects like this and just beginning a new year, I really need you to check in with us and give us more of an understanding. Like, I did not know about this project, and I mean, I really don't. I just want to make sure that Northern Healdsburg Avenue doesn't sit and wait to be fixed. I want to move forward to get paving. That's what I want. I understand we have a vision, and in 2022, we're going to get some money for $600,000, but we have to continue to look at the actual street itself and fix it, and that's what I want to make clear. That street needs to be fixed before anything. I mean, we need to get that street fixed. So I just want to make sure that is not just the false dichotomy of I mean, this plan is, and I agree, I think, Councilor McCaffrey, you did the best job for me tonight to characterize a bit more about what it does mean in terms of looking at the whole community. And I appreciated the way you, again, emphasized about how this will set us up. My concern is money spent, and I need from this staff an understanding of when money is being spent. I want to know more about what we're getting in terms of future, and these grants to me are important, but they shouldn't be the answer to, or it shouldn't be the reason we do something. We do it because it's the right thing to do it. So yeah, let's spend $450,000 with MIG. I'm glad you're here, and I respectfully appreciate you being here. I'm not trying to be antagonistic, but I have a hard time when people call me and ask me how money is spent, and I really do appreciate you being in the room when we're talking about something that is a plan, and a plan, as Councilwoman Gold told you, has been made for entryways in this town, and I'm surprised you don't know about it, but maybe you didn't know about it. How would you know about it, right? We need to glue things together, and we need to synthesize and listen to each other and get better communication, because outreach is really a tricky thing in this town, and maybe we can talk about that, because we've done surveys. We know how to get things so people think they're going to vote a certain way on measures. It all comes down to what we genuinely believe we want. And as a city, I think, as Councilwoman Gold said, things change up based on your council, based on the way the town is changing rapidly. And I think the vitality of the city has to do with livability. And you can't live somewhere if the streets are inferior for that many people. So I would argue I can support this in terms of, it's the plan we need. I'm not sure I want to just let it go, though, that Northern Healdsburg Avenue needs support. And I would love to see a bike lane before this is realized. In other words, I feel we need to get a bike lane. And I'm not sure how that's going to look. Maybe our new director of Public Works can work with me on that, because I really feel like it's a no-brainer. We need to have a bike lane going all the way up. I think it's important. So I just appreciate all the questions. This may seem tedious to people, but this is how this council is growing and learning, and I appreciate everybody's input. And I don't mean to back down as much as I learn as I ask questions, and it may be tedious for people, but I appreciate MIG being here, and I appreciate obviously Director of Public Works coming with Engineer Landers, and just knowing that I appreciate you, okay? I don't mean to be disrespectful, but it's a lot of money, and it's a direction that, I don't know, I hope it opens doors for us that isn't just about development, but actually livability, and I hope that the value is for the people that live here now and not necessarily looking for the people that are going to move here. Because I think that's part of what we're going to talk about with the SDAT, is what we actually value in this town and who we are. So thank you for being here. And do we have to do anything else,
No,
City
so
Manager?
for clarity at this point, doing a
Thanks
poll.
for being open to
At this point, we will be moving forward with the contract. I'll be signing the agreement here shortly.
Done with that old business item that felt very new to me. Thank you very much for enduring that, and thank you, MIG, for being part of our world and our future. All right, so now I'm like completely moved around here, so bear with me. I'm going to need that. Okay, we're moving on to new business, which is Measure V survey and the budget process that's going along with that. So I guess I'm going to turn this over to our Assistant City Manager.
Good evening, Mayor Mansell and fellow council members. Tonight we're going to talk about the Measure V survey, and the action before you is by motion to approve the proposed Measure V survey. Little bit of background. The city and the council are committed to an ongoing, transparent, and public process with Measure V and how the funds are spent. Included in the language of this measure is the obligation for the city to survey our citizens on how these funds should be spent in the areas of priority. Measure V is a half-cent sales tax used to fund vital city services and programs. 100% of the revenue is spent locally for the benefit of Healdsburg residents. Funding priorities include public safety, street maintenance and repair, economic development, and the maintenance of city facilities. The Measure V outreach campaign last year included, actually this is this year's proposed campaign, that we're going to launch the survey on January 15th. That will include the electronic launch on our social media. It'll be mailed to our utility customers. It'll be put on the city's website. It'll be included in the Cityscape Healdsburg Tribune article. The Chamber of Commerce will send out an email from their members. The link will be provided on the social media networks. E-notifier with a link to the electronic survey. And plus, we're going to also email it out through the Park and Rec's email list that they have. That was not done in the past. The deadline is going to be February 12th, and you can expect me back on February 26th to present the results and receive community input on the funding priorities. What is on the screen right now is a proposed Measure V survey. The one difference that's been removed from the proposed survey is under miscellaneous. I did remove housing, and the reason I did that is because what's different now from last year is that we have a housing source. We have Measure S. And right now, as of June 30th of 18, the estimated available funds in Measure S unappropriated are going to be about $301,000, and the inclusionary housing deposit has about a little over $400,000. The estimated annual Measure S revenue is going to be is about $546,000, and with the opening of Trio and H3, that annual Measure S revenue is expected to increase by about $125,000 in fiscal year 18-19 to about $671,000. So with that very brief presentation, the action before you is to, by motion, approve the proposed Measure V survey.
Okay. We have some questions.
So I just had a question for clarity. So what we're talking about today is the format of the thing that's going to be sent out to the people to perform the survey, and then that's going to come back to us, and then we're going to make the decisions.
So a
on
couple years ago, there was some concerns from council about the actual language which was on the measure. And so this is about 3 years ago, at that point, staff started presenting the actual measure at the first or second meeting in January to make sure council was comfortable with the language and comfortable with what the community was being asked of. So that's all this is at this point, is do that. And I know Assistant City Manager, I believe, mentioned this, but I want to stress this. This is a tool for council to determine how to use those funds. This is not statistically valid. This is a community survey. It's anecdotal in nature. We get a tremendous amount of response, but if you're looking for some statistic validity to this, that is not what this survey is. This is just another tool for you, the decision makers, and plus additional public comment to determine how you want to use those Measure V funds.
Questions? Yeah.
Yeah. Just real quick. I think it is important to include with this what was allocated this year and how that money was spent with maybe a little, so that people see. They don't just say, okay, 50% here and 25% here. They see, okay, this is what we actually did, and this is the dollar amount, and the Dry Creek interchange. This is how much. A little description.
That information is included on the website. We're trying to save the mailing costs to include it in the to not necessarily include it in the survey. We include on the front side is English, on the back is Spanish to everybody in the utility billing software. And then we have the history on the website.
Okay. Well, then maybe the avenue to save money is to have something that's shareable on Facebook. Because I know posts that you've been putting up have been blasted all over, which is great. Thank you.
Anyone?
So the next part of the equation, of course, is going to be information about what specifically is being proposed. In other words, public safety, a certain percent, what does that equal for us? Or roads, a certain percent, what will that buy us? Because I think that's going to be an important part of our decision making. So is that the kind of thing that we will be given we have a special meeting in February, so we'll have that kind of information.
That's exactly what we'll be giving you on the February meeting.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So in the actual agenda, I don't see the proposed 2018. It's proposed 2018 is only in the printout.
The proposed survey is what's on your screen right now.
Right.
What was included in the agenda was last year's.
Right. Got it. Okay, so that's what we're looking at.
Right. And the change is the removal of the housing piece under miscellaneous.
Understood. Okay. Do we know what the response rate was, or the numbers of responses? I forget. I mean, I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I had him in slides, and we were reducing our slide quantity. There you go. Hold on. Last year, the city received 1,026 surveys, 954 print, 72 online.
So yeah, I think I like the idea of being really clear. I mean, I know that about being really clear about how we spent the money. I realize that it's that the information is available on the website, but now that we have a brilliant outreach director, maybe we can have. I would like to see a little bit more energy spent on. Hey guys, this is what we did last time. So I would echo that sentiment. I would also, now that we do have an outreach specialist, we could also focus on increasing those numbers that we just looked at. As a target of, how can we increase those by, I don't know, 15%? What do you think? But aside from that, I also support. I'm fine with taking out the housing. I think it makes it really much cleaner. Housing never was part of the original Measure V, so I think it's more relevant to keep it out. So in other words, except for those minor suggestions about linking more to the past performance and then focusing on increasing our performance in terms of response, I'm fine with this plan.
And before we open this to public comment, I'd just like to chime in that the reason I was so adamant about putting housing is because I felt housing was connected to economic development. and former Director of Housing and Economic Development, those two things together. Her title was that because, and you know, Director Massey argued that it is in fact a connection, economic development and housing. So I have a hard time letting go of that because I think the year that we did put it, we got a lot of feedback. I understand that statistically and scientifically, it's anecdotal, all that, but my concern is that as a council, it is important for us to keep our eye on that. And even though, yeah, $250,000, I mean, in this town, what does that buy? So I don't think we can ever allot enough money toward the issue of worker housing or hospitality housing or the issues around the complexity of trying to get developments that take care of their workers in a more efficient way than what we presently have. So I had a hard time letting go of that, but doesn't sound like anyone else is, so I'll cave to that one. I do want to make sure that we do let people know what we're doing with the money, and I think that it's very important. If I'm being asked to put a percentage or a number on that line, I want to know in the past what has been funded on that, because I may not understand something about that, and clearly it's important to have concrete examples. So I don't know how much money it costs to put something out more than just two sides, but I think there's more than two sides for this issue, literally. I think that we need to include somehow on the survey, for example, and then cite some of those things so people have a concrete example of what it looks like, even though I know you've got categories, but you don't have actual projects. So I would argue for more specificity on that one. And then also, do these go out through the electric bills? Is that how you're doing it?
Yes.
Okay, so
actually, no. Sorry about that. It's actually a separate mailing. We just use the information from the utility system for the mailing. So it's a mailing by itself. And last year we included a return envelope.
Because what I've noticed when I get my electrical bill is sometimes there's flyers in there that are one-sided, and I want every single piece of paper to be used on both sides. So if we can do that, maybe one of these goes out, and then maybe if there's another flyer that ends up on our electric bill, we could possibly put something on the back there. I'm just being creative about paper use. I don't know if that even makes sense, but like the next billing, if we put something in there, could we use the back to say, by the way, Measure V,
So if it's council's consensus that you'd like to get some past performance of how we spent the money, if you would allow staff to figure that out, and if the direction is to include that with this mailer, I think staff can figure that out. If that is the consensus of council.
Yeah, I just have other ideas about how we're going to get people to want to vote for Measure V again, and I think that is going to be. This isn't just about spending Measure V; it's about the future of Measure V, and I want to be sensitive to making sure our public understands what's been spent and past years and what the values have been. So I really like that idea. So I would support that if we can somehow do that, and staff can come up with the idea if they want to.
Just to follow up on your comment about the housing, I mean, if you're saying housing is part of economic development, why don't we just add it as a including aspect of economic development programs?
I have no problem adding a word on there, or even workforce housing. I think it's interesting for people to know what connections there are between economic development and housing, but I'm always interested in that. And this is not scientific, so why not be subjective and put it down as
So, Madam Mayor, this is a really good conversation council's having. Maybe if we allow the public to comment on it, then that'll allow some additional.
Public comment is now open. I'm sorry to hold you up. Does anybody want to come up and make a comment about the Measure V survey and the proposal to create a community survey?
Richard Berg, Fitch Street. I think you should leave housing on there. In 2005, 1,000 people came to the plaza and answered a number of questions. One was, what single thing would most improve the quality of life in Healdsburg? Strangely enough, it was housing. And 3 years ago, there was a housing committee formed, and they spent a lot of time on housing and tried to develop a proposal that the community would accept. The housing committee's been reconstituted. They're looking at how to solve the housing crisis in Healdsburg, which isn't really all that unique for West Coast cities or maybe currently the entire nation. So I think to allow people to answer housing and their percentage is a piece of information that would be quite valuable for you to see that just because there's continued work going on, people aren't necessarily willing to turn their eyes away from it. And I think leaving it off would leave people thinking, gee, I saw housing there last year. Why isn't it here now? Nothing's been done yet. Also, to really deal with affordable housing, if I gathered, the total for Measure V last year was $250,000. That's really a tiny, tiny piece if you want to solve the housing problem. So my suggestion is you leave it in. The only other thing I'd have to say is I'm curious if you've thought about ballot stuffing, whether people responding put their electric bill number on the envelope so it gets thrown away when the envelope is opened. I don't know that it matters a great deal, and I know it's not an attempt to create a statistically valid poll of the community. But someone who was interested could vote a lot. And we want people to vote, but not necessarily a lot. Thank you.
Anyone else like to share their opinion?
Be quick. Ariel Kelly, Grove Street. I want to echo Richard's comment. I was at the council meeting last year when you were reviewing the results of this survey from 2017. And while I think it was a double-digit number, either 10% or 14% of respondents wanted that or wanted 10 or 14% of the money to go towards housing, clearly the community knows that there is funding that's needed towards housing. And I think there's probably some public education around Measure S that's missing. I agree that now that we do have Measure S, there is an additional funding source there for housing, but the numbers are tiny. When you look at how much it costs to purchase, think about the Center Street project that you guys purchased, those apartments. If we didn't have money available to buy those, they would have gone to the highest bidder, the developer, and someone would have bought them. The city needs to have an arsenal of cash ready for when properties come available that you want to purchase for affordable housing, that you can compete with developers, because property in this town is very expensive and it's only getting more expensive. And so great, we have $500,000 in a housing fund. We're continuing to grow that $250,000 a year, whatever it's going to be, but we're not even going to crest $1 million in that fund till 2019 at the soonest. That's not a lot of money to have on hand for purchasing property or for housing. And so I would just argue that we should be doing whatever we can to build that fund, because we know that housing is such a huge priority, as evidenced by the respondents of this survey last year. I think that once you got those survey results, you decided, the people that were on the council at the time, decided not even to fund at the level that the community had asked for. So really it's just data gathering at this point. I think it's important to include it on there, and educate the public that Measure S exists in some way on this, and then look at the data and see if it still shows that even though people know about Measure S, they still want some of this money to go towards housing. You could still choose to not go for that again. I think that the money towards housing was ultimately taken out of the equation, but it's a really big deal, and to ask the public and then choose later if you want to follow it. But I would urge to include housing. Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment.
Marilyn Joyce, Healdsburg. I just heard Ariel Kelly say, urge to include housing. I did it last year and then was so disappointed because the survey, it's a questionnaire, it's not a survey. It's, it had no tooth. So never mind 14%, which was pretty high as a percentage of people who wanted it to go to housing. We give them 1%. So I think what I would focus on is, if we ask people, then let's pay attention to what they say and not have it be kind of a joke. Maybe that wasn't very nice. Sorry. Thanks.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, we're closing public comment, so let's go.
Well,
Council member.
Yes, I would like to support the staff's decision to leave housing off of the survey for several reasons. for one reason, the amount, as been mentioned, it's such a minute sum that it's really not going to make any difference. And in a way, you're misleading people if they think that it is making a difference. It's a very tiny portion. I think that affordable housing is such a huge issue that it tends to overshadow other things. And that certainly is the effect it would have on me when I see it here. I would say, oh, city facilities compared to affordable housing, forget it, you know. Affordable housing is just so important. But it's not the main thrust of Measure V. We have Measure S for affordable housing, and that is not nearly enough, but it's way more than some tiny percentage of this. So I think that they are correct to keep the focus on the purposes of Measure V, and that affordable housing is a separate issue and we need to have a robust funding source, but this is not it. So that's my opinion.
I agree. Oh,
sorry.
Go ahead.
Councilman McCaffrey. Okay, he's conceding.
Yeah. Sorry, I agree with Councilmember Gold. I think we do need to focus on what this was originally put out there for us to kind of get the public temperature on these categories. And, you know, while housing is important, I do think, you know, I do agree with the staff decision on why they left it off. I don't think it changes the fact that affordable housing and finding ways to fund it is important to us. That's not lost on us at all. And we continue to look for ways. It's not, oh, Measure S passed and we're done. So I'm fine with having that left off. I do think it's important as we're coming to the sunset of Measure V that we are responsible to what the original intent of the voters was. And these categories, you know, maybe nobody cares about city facilities and everybody wants it into public safety or economic development. But that's the reason for the survey, is those 4 categories. And so I'm fine with leaving this the way it is. Economic development, I think, you know, just leave it how it is, would be my thoughts.
McCaffrey?
Yeah, so I think that's a great way to think of it. You know, so Measure V was what's called a general fund tax, and so that requires a 50% plus one vote, and this happened to pass by, you know, about 55.5% or 2,800 people that voted in an actual ballot that was official and all that. So, and you know, the question was about those 4 things, and I think you're exactly right in that, you know, this was in 2012 and it sunsets in 10 years after that, so 2022. I'm just thinking ahead to the time when we want to extend Measure V because it's been such a boon for the general fund, which includes those things. And, you know, we for every 30 cents that a Healdsburg resident spends, we get $1. You know, it's one of those things that is just a great deal for everybody involved. And I think that while housing is very important, almost you could look at it to where it affects all these things, right? I mean, housing has got to be our top priority, and I know that it is. But these things are important too, and I think that as far as the voters are concerned, having it be consistent throughout the years, if we want to make the survey, you know, incrementally more valid, if we keep it consistent like that with what was on the original measure, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Councilman Yilkes?
Yeah, I concur that I think it's important to maintain the integrity of the original intent of the tax. And with that, I agree that just focusing on these 4 segments are appropriate and you know, honest. My only suggestion would be, you know, here of course you know what I'm going to say. The street maintenance repair includes repairing sidewalks. I'd like to say, you know, improving pedestrian and bicycle access. That's just like a part, you know, something there that's up front, so that's you know, visible as something that is included. Because I think there's a lot of people we it keeps on coming up, that are very passionate about it and and if they saw that in there, they might be more likely to put those to weigh in on that topic. I also want to address the concern about the data integrity and making sure that we are that there isn't that concept of ballot stuffing. So I don't know. I guess maybe that would be a question for staff to address that, Madam Mayor or Mr.
Council.
A quick comment on that. So we used to do mailings and print tickets for the Duck Dash, and to get tickets for at the 4th of July, and to get everything printed with a unique serial number on it was like 3 times as expensive as getting it. And then you have to have like security features and all this stuff on there to make it, ultimately this comes down to our vote. And this is just kind of a tool. It's almost like a Kentucky windage of, okay, where's the public thinking? And, I remember you talk about ballot stuffing, right? Like the Press Democrat, bartender of the year or whatever. I mean, it's rampant and that kind of thing. But I think here, you might see a little bit of it, but I don't know. It's in the end, it's always up to us, and that's kind of
Yeah, I don't think it's enough of a concern to take up staff time to try to make sure that all the responses are unique. I just don't think there's going to be that many people who are going to be that into it that they'll put a lot of energy in it and really skew the response. I don't think it's a big issue.
Okay, and I'm just going to chime in and say that I think that by eliminating housing, we're eliminating what the actual intent was. If you go back and look, and if we're going to try to sell Measure V, we have to sell it to the public that's here now. And if it sunsets without the acknowledgement that we have a huge problem in this town and in this county with housing, I think it's erroneous. But I'm clearly outnumbered when it comes to wanting to put housing back on here. But after listening to the citizens and thinking back to last year when we didn't honor what 14% of the people or 10%, I remember sitting at this table. If you look at the actual intention, I hope y'all do, it does not say anything about you. I mean, look, we're funding the Chamber of Commerce with this money, okay? If you can fund the Healdsburg Chamber of Commerce with money from a sales tax, how could you not see the same thing should be applicable to workforce housing or looking at a little tiny, I mean, this is a values-based decision. So if you look at the actual intention for the tax, I disagree that it said anything about only these categories. It talks about the health and safety and welfare of Healdsburg citizens. And if you want to talk about this building being more important than someone having a house, I mean, I just think it's interesting the way we value city facilities over something like building affordable housing with the same money we spend when we decide to remodel City Hall. I just bring it up because I think it's about values. I'm not bashing past decisions. I'm just asking us to keep an open mind about affordable housing or workforce housing. As long as we don't put it on there will be people in our town that see this and they say, well, you want Measure V survey or you want Measure V to pass next year. I don't know. It doesn't mirror what I thought last year. Why is it not there? I think it is an issue. I think that points were well made today. I disagree that we're going against what the purpose was. Redevelopment money was taken away. What are we using RDA money for now? Housing. I mean, housing is a part of this. So I don't think it's something you can just put over to the side and say it's not part of this. I disagree. And I just think that, I'm clearly outnumbered and I accept that, but I don't think that it's a good sign for the council when each one of us in our candidacies talk about affordable housing, and then we have this opportunity to mirror that value somehow in a survey that isn't scientific, but really just subjective, put things down. I just have a problem with that. I just mentioned that. So as we move forward, we can remember affordable housing.
I just want to make the point that it's not a values survey.
Well, the comments closed,
well,
Richard.
It is a value survey, though, because you're asking people what they value.
Well, no, you're asking them how to spend this specific little pot of money from Measure V. You're not asking them generally about what they think the highest needs are for Healdsburg. I think it's two different things.
Well, I don't think it's the same thing is what you're saying, but I agree that you see it differently. That's okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on Councilmember Neal.
Yeah.
I like the idea of adding the bike and pedestrian in there under the street. I like that. And I agree. I don't think, like I said before, the need for affordable housing and funding it, I don't think that's, in doubt here at the council level, and I agree with what Councilmember Gold said, is having housing included in this survey, I think, distracts from the other items that were originally the reason for having this survey. And honestly, last year when we did have the responses and then we just said ignore it, I agree with Ms. Joyce, her comments about, you know, it was a joke. And, you know, that was a decision that we made to, you know, push the money toward the improvements and whatever. But I don't think by leaving it off, this council is saying housing is not important. I think we're focusing on, all right, tell us how to divvy it up between these categories, and there's miscellaneous, and there's still another category that if people wanted to write in housing, they could.
And they did in the past, in order they did in the past, 2 years ago, and then last year we put it on. So thank you. I just wanted to express my opinion.
I move that we accept the Measure V survey as noted, with adding in bike and pedestrian, and also with staff looking at the better ways to show specific projects that were done in the various categories.
So what does that look like? I just want to clarify before you second it. I want to understand, because there was a lot of little things there. So could you repeat back what you understand? Or?
So I said I want to accept the survey as it's written by staff.
Okay.
It includes in street maintenance and repair, bike and pedestrian. And it also includes the staff to work on a better way to show specific projects that were in each category.
Excellent. Okay.
That's my motion.
And I will second that motion.
Simple, all in favor.
All vote, or do we roll call?
Okay. Councilmember Gold?
Yes.
Councilmember McCaffrey?
Yes.
Councilmember Nayokas?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Higley?
Yes.
Mayor Mansell?
Yes. I guess I still get to. Okay, now it's time to bang the gavel, says former Mayor McCaffrey, feeling very comfortable tonight. So I am now going to adjourn the first meeting of the year of 2018 with a diverse, thoughtful group of council members. No problem.